Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I analyse games using the mindset of speedrunning and look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people first play the game. Next, the speedrunning experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. And finally, the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description and chapters on the video. Today we're looking at Banjo-Kazooie. And I'm very excited because this is my absolute favourite game ever. Really been looking forward to doing this episode. Before we get stuck into it, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date. They help out a channel a whole bunch and I have a new video up every fortnight. So I'll start off by saying I have so much to talk about with this game. I'm going to try and be fairly concise and get through stuff quickly so I can talk about everything I want without the video being like 10 hours long. Any tricks or anything that I talk through quickly, I'll leave links in the description where I've made longer videos explaining them in more depth. But in this video you're going to get an overview of what the game is first of all, and then how it plays as a speed game, along with the cool tech involved. So what is this game? Well, we have Banjo there and Kazooie and their younger sister Tootie. It's like a Snow White parody that Grunty the Witch kidnaps Tootie, and then the goal is to get Tootie back. As a kid, this was all I needed in a plot. You're trying to save somebody, there's somebody who is obviously the villain, and Grunty is an amazing villain. She's always like rhyming and stuff in the lair and like taunting you and everything, and you really get to know her before you come to that final battle. Not to mention you've got Kazooie who drops some pretty funny lines as well. There is so much character boiled into this game in every text box, and in the speedrun we skip pretty much every text box. But if you're playing this for the first time, I would definitely recommend reading through all this text since there's some good gold buried in there. Once you get into this game, it is a 3D platformer. Now a lot of people will compare this to Super Mario 64. I don't want to weigh into this too much. Super Mario 64 did it first, and in my opinion Banjo-Kazooie improved on it quite a bit in this game. Now, absolutely, both of those games are definitely worth playing. Basically, the first area is just to teach you all like the basic moves in the game, and you get a few honeycombs as well. Honeycombs will just restore your health and give you like 1 extra as your maximum. You can get up to 8 extra in the game by collecting a whole bunch of honeycombs there. But the real goal is just to get up to Grunty's lair here and then start the proper game. Bottles will repair the bridge for you that was originally broken, or you could just say that you already know the moves at the start of the game and the bridge is ready to go anyway. And fun fact, when that bridge is repaired, the old bridge is actually stored under the map there, just at the bottom of the screen. Now when you get into the lair, it's heavily implied that you have a time limit for this game, but that is absolutely not the case. You can take as long as you want. But you're thrown into the mechanics of this game pretty much straight away. Here we have a Jiggy, and Banjo's lovely Jiggy Jig. So the Jiggy Jig is wonderful, it really adds a lot of character to this game, although it can be a little bit frustrating in a speedrun since it takes 4.5 seconds every time you get a Jiggy. I am pretty glad they removed it in Banjo-Tooie. You immediately learn that you use Jiggies to open levels like Mumbo's Mountain here, our first level, and we'll head straight in. Here the collectibles really ramp up, and you see where it gets its name, the Collectathon. We get our Jinjos here, we've got notes on the hill there, there's 10 Jiggies in each level, and there's 2 honeycombs in each level. I'm also grabbing Mumbo tokens there to help with transformations, and we talk to Bottles to learn new moves. You get yourself the ground pound move, although I'm probably upsetting people by not calling it Beak Buster. You also get yourself the eggs, which you can shoot forward or poop out. And most importantly, you get the Talon Trot move. This just allows you to move a little bit faster than normal Banjo walking, and Kazooie sort of carries Banjo around. It's a really cool dynamic, and you can tell they put a lot of thought into this character design. You know, Rare wanted a double jump, so they added a bird in Banjo's backpack, and then it all sort of went from there. Now, in about half of the levels, you'll run into Mumbo Jumbo, who will transform you into an animal creature. In this first level, it's the termite. So the thing that I didn't mention about Talon Trot is it helps you climb up steeper slopes, and the termite helps you climb up like even steeper slopes. This is actually one criticism I have of this game. They probably shouldn't have introduced both slope mechanics in the same level. So you got to use the termite to get up Ticker's tower here. And if you try and use Talon Trot, you'll get up the first couple of platforms, but you won't get up all of them. As a kid, I was so confused about this, and we spent ages and ages in Tigger's Tower trying to figure out how the heck to get up there, not realizing we had to be the termite. You also had to collect all 5 Mumbo tokens in the level to become the termite, and there's only 5, and some of them are pretty well hidden. So yeah, not saying they couldn't have had Talon Trot to get up slopes and then like a super Talon Trot in the form of a Termite, but maybe they should have spread them out a little bit more so that players weren't confused. Hey, you've just got a slope move, but you can't use it to get up the slopes. So when you get to the end of each level, you should have 10 Jiggies, 100 notes, and 2 honeycombs from that level, and you can check it on your total screen to make sure you've actually got it. The kind of brutal thing about this game is if you don't get all 100 notes and you leave the level or die, then if you come back in, you've got to get all those same notes over again to get up to 100. It's something called a note score, and if you want to get 100%, you have to get all 100 notes in one playthrough of the level. For this reason, I would actually recommend the Xbox version if you're going to casually play through this game. Now, in case you're wondering what version to play, here's a handy dandy summary of everything that I think is pretty important. There's a lot of other differences, but these are the main ones. So the big one is that notes will keep on a death or exit on a level on Xbox. It's going to be much less punishing to play on Xbox. Lag and load times are very fast on Xbox, so the game's going to feel smoother, the room's going to load faster. The input delay on both Xbox and N64 is pretty minimal. Although, when I'm playing Xbox, I feel like Banjo does what I want him to more often than not. On N64, sometimes you drop inputs or miss jumps or can't quite get up onto a ledge or whatever. Some original glitches are fixed on the Xbox version, notably you can't do something called dog skip on Xbox, but some new, really interesting glitches are introduced on Xbox, and we'll talk about that in the speedrun section. And with text skip, you can press L, R, and B to skip text on Nintendo 64 and Switch, but on Xbox they never bound the L button to anything, so you actually can't, even though the function's still in the game. So if you're playing casually, you'll probably want to read the text for the first time, but if you're speedrunning, it can get a little bit jarring scrolling through the text all the way there. The Switch version is essentially just an emulated N64 version. I would steer away from that if you can, unless it's your only way to play it. And on Switch, I guess you might have the save state feature, which could help redeem some of that note stuff. But the thing for me with Switch is the input lag on it is horrible, and Banjo is a game that relies on low input lag. For example, Banjo has this Jiggy where you have to run across the very narrow path under a time limit. So if you're playing this on Switch, you would find this a lot more difficult than N64. That being said, if you're playing N64, try and put it into a CRT or something, not a modern TV, or like use a low latency monitor or something. If you play Banjo on a modern TV, you're also going to get issues with input lag. Once again, that kind of makes Xbox a little bit better since you wouldn't run into those issues. I know a lot of people feel strongly about this one way or the other, but I very much feel that Xbox gets a lot of hate that it probably doesn't deserve. And that's saying a lot because it's pretty rare that I endorse a port of the game. Normally they find some way to screw it up. And Xbox did screw it up a bit not having text skip, but it's overall a pretty good experience. Anyway, back to the actual levels here now. We've got Treasure Trove Cove, which is like a beach level. You learn the Shock Spring Pad and the Flying Pad, which are both very good moves. Now, just one little tip for if you're playing this game, pretty much always hold down the R button at all times when you're swimming or flying. It'll make Banjo turn quite a bit sharper and make everything feel a lot easier, in particular Clanker's Cavern. A couple of other notable bits about Treasure Trove Cove. We have this room where you have to spell Banjo-Kazooie on the floor, and then if you do that you get a Jiggy. When we were playing this as kids, I actually was down reading the front of the cartridge to see how it was spelt and then telling my brother like what letters to press on the sandcastle floor, and we could barely make the time limit because we were like 5 years old and could barely read. And you got a few other fun characters here like Blubber who needs his gold. Next up we get Clanker's Cavern, which is pretty much the first and only water level in this game. A lot of people absolutely hate this level, and for good reason. I don't really like it that much either. But it's actually kind of fun once you get used to it. You just got to get used to the swimming mechanics. And remember, hold R when you're swimming. The thing that puts a lot of people off about this level is you got to swim down this really big hole section here. You got to get a whole bunch of notes in Ginger and turn a key to release Clanker. Now, how do you have enough air to do this? Well, really Gloop's down here who's going to spit out a whole bunch of bubbles, and then those bubbles will help you restore your air as you need it. So that's how you deal with this section here. But a lot of people, if they're not used to swimming here, will die over and over in this section. And since the game doesn't save your notes, that makes it really difficult to do this. Now, one thing that might help if you're playing this casually, that Jiggy that's on Clanker's back, as soon as you get that Jiggy, Clanker will be raised forever in the game, so you won't have to turn the key again. I think a lot of people will die at this point, not realizing that they could have avoided turning the key again and then just have to do it all again anyway. Now, along with the spooky swimming sections, Clankers also has this really narrow path of notes that you're definitely going to fall off if you have basically any input lag on this game, like the Switch version. So this puts a lot of people off playing on this level too. Actually, in my years of trying to show people Banjo-Kazooie who didn't have it as a kid, I find that I don't have a lot of luck, and it's usually this level that puts people off. Trust me, if you get past this level, you'll enjoy the game quite a bit more, and if you're playing it on Xbox, then you don't have to worry about deaths being so punishing. You've then got Bubble Gloop Swamp. This level is really special to me because it's like my first actual memory of Banjo-Kazooie. I remember we were up to Bubble Gloop Swamp for some reason on the first day we got it, and I was not old enough to play the game yet, but I really enjoyed climbing up all these things, which I guess kind of look like cotton buds or whatever, these things that you climb. Q-tips for American audiences, but yeah, I don't know what those actually supposed to be. This level has a few really iconic bits like the Turtle Choir where you've got to jump on their backs in the order that they played the musical note. Move over, Guitar Hero, right? Well, sometimes when you ground pound on these turtles, the ground pound just doesn't register, so that can be kind of frustrating. Not to mention in a speedrun, if you get a bad pattern, then you lose a whole bunch of time. You then have Mr. Vile, the greedy crocodile. This is probably one of the most well-known parts of the game. I don't know why people like it so much. I guess it's just a good meme. From my perspective, it's a 3-minute auto-scroller, so I don't really enjoy it that much, but it's fun the first time you play it. If you play the first round, you got to get reds. Second round, you got to get reds again, but third round it swaps. If you're having trouble on the third round, my advice is look at the timer. Every time it hits a multiple of 10 seconds, it's going to swap over to the other color. So kind of prepare yourself for that. The other thing to mention is that Mr. Vile rubber bands pretty heavily. So if you go really hard at the start of Mr. Vile, then you'll actually have a lot of trouble at the end because he's going to speed up heaps. The same thing happens with Boggy in the next level. You might also notice there are speed shoes behind Mr. Vile that aren't unlocked there. So with those speed shoes, you can unlock them in a later level in the game, but it's quicker to do Mr. Vile if you can do them without speed shoes. So there's a bit of a trade-off there if you're playing casually. Speaking of weird trade-offs, this level, Frazese Peak and Gobi's Valley both have a move in them, but you need the move from one level for the other level, so there's some unavoidable backtracking there. You need Beak Bomb from FP to beat Gobi's Valley, and then you need Speed Shoes from Gobi's Valley to fully beat FP. So my advice if you're playing casually, come into Frazese Peak, get the move, and then just leave and then go to Gobi's Valley. That's what I'd be doing. This level has a really cool sequence of jiggies involving Boggy the bear. Basically, he's like eating a jiggy and you have to like slam it out of his stomach, and then he gets so excited that he wants to race you around the level. But while all the races are going on, he's like left his kids at home without the Christmas presents, and you have to get the presents for them, and they're all like real sad without Boggy there. Rare is such a cool company. We then run into another iconic character, Wazza. Wazza likes to discriminate based on your species. He'll only give you a jiggy if you're a walrus, but not if you're the bear. It's kind of a weird message to send to kids, I guess. Sixth level is Gobi's Valley. This is like a desert level. You can actually tell this is one of the first levels that Rare made because it's got like holes in the geometry everywhere and it's not like overly polished. But it's still like a really, really fun level to play overall. Definitely one of my favorites. In fact, story time, when I was a kid, I used to just want to play Banjo-Kazooie all the time, but was obviously only allowed to for like a little bit of the day. I asked my parents when they were going to be going to bed, and they said like, I don't know, 9 o'clock or whatever, and I was going to bed at 7. Anyway, I stayed in my room and counted off and ticked off the minutes in like a little scrapbook just by counting to 60 seconds each time. And I did that for long enough that it would have been the 2 hours that I had to wait, that I'd know they'd be in bed. And then I went out and played Banjo. I 100%ed Gobi's Valley, and it was a grand old time. My parents came out halfway through and found me playing Banjo at a ridiculously late hour when I was like 5. And it's a wonderful, wonderful memory. I don't think they were that happy though. Couple things about this level. We definitely didn't know that you could shoot the eggs into the nose here to unlock this door. This was one of the last jiggies we got. I probably didn't get this one when I was doing my late night banjo session. You've then got Grabber the Hand, which is like holding a jiggy. It's a really cool concept. You have to go and get the speed shoes and come and grab it really quickly before you can snatch the jiggy away. Such a cool concept for a jiggy, and I definitely remember getting this one when I did my late night banjo session. I was so hyped to figure out how to get this when I was like 5 or 6 years old. You've also got Gobi the Camel, which shows up in a few different locations across this level. Gobi's like a recurring character across the Banjo series. You've then got to bully Gobi by like making him water a plant in one of the later levels in this game. Interestingly, he gets very frustrated with you and says he's going to go off to the lava world. Now, there was actually no lava world in Banjo-Kazooie, so this is often cited as evidence for like a beta aspect of the game. Like, oh, maybe he was supposed to go to the lava world. Funnily enough, they sort of like retconned this in Banjo-Tooie, or maybe they were always planning to do it, but Gobi does end up in the lava world in the sequel of this game. It's really cool to see that connection all play out. In fact, I remember doing a speedrun with me and another runner called Mittens. We called it All Camels, and we had to play Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie and like find Gobi in all spots of both games and do whatever was required there. Such a fun category, and cool to have a multi-game category. Next up we got a Mad Monster Mansion. There's a few really cool G's in this level. You got this one with Nappa, and you're supposed to not tread on the creaky floorboards, otherwise you're going to wake him up. So you have to like come through the chimney all stealthily and grab the G from him. Really cool concept. And you got cool scenery all across the level, like this little church area. You have to get this Jiggy from pooping eggs into the pots. Now I know people will be upset if I don't say this about the pots. So the pots are supposed to say thank you when you poop eggs into them, but let's just say it definitely sounds like something else. So people used to think that Rare did this intentionally to make it sound like that, but apparently they had to keep recording it so many times so that it wouldn't sound like that, and that was the one that sounded the least like they were swearing at the player. MMM also has this other little game where you have to spell Banjo-Kazooie by, rolling the ice over each specific letter. I don't know why, they just really like his spelling in this game. And you've also got Mozart here who plays the organ. So you're supposed to copy what he plays. You can actually do it in advance if you know which notes he's going to play like this. So the notes here, they don't actually play the proper organ notes. And if you hit the same note twice, it'll play like a different note each time, which is kind of odd. It sounds very strange. Turns out what they were actually trying to do with this is they were trying to make the note match whatever the background song was playing at the time, and that's why it changes. Although the funny thing is they completely broke it on the Xbox version. The Xbox version just plays the same note every time you hit whatever key. And like different keys on the Xbox version just all play that one same note. It's very odd. Then we've got Rusty Bucket Bay. Now Rusty Bucket Bay is probably one of the hardest levels in the game, mainly due to this room right here, the engine room. So with the engine room here, if you fall off, you die. And there's lots of things that can cause you to fall off, like this enemy right here, the turning cogs, or the spinning fan blades. Now you can slow down the fan blades, but if you're doing it in a speedrun, you try not to do that here. The engine room is incredibly scary. With the engine room here, you've got to hit these two switches, and then they start a timer for a Jiggy kind of further out in Rusty Bucket Bay in the outside area. And then you've got to get back through engine room under the time limit, which again is really, really scary. So a lot of people have trouble with this, and this was definitely one of the last G's that we got when we were playing Banjo. The thing that makes it so challenging is just this section here where you have to jump through the fans. I've got them slowed down in this footage here, but you know, even if you slow them down, it's incredibly difficult to make it through. And once you get used to it, it's fine. And actually, engine room is one of my favorite rooms in the speedrun now because I just really like the movement through it. But definitely casually, this will put a lot of people off. Maybe if you're going to play it and not worry about 100%, you might just want to leave this room. Or if you need 100%, definitely do this room at the start of your Rusty Bucket Bay playthrough, not towards the end, because you might just die and lose all your notes. Not too much to say about this level, except that you have to save Snorkel the dolphin here, except in the process of saving this dolphin, the anchor essentially cuts it in half by going through it. I know it's not supposed to do that, but it definitely looks like it'd be painful for Snorkel there. Now the last level in the game is Click Clock Wood, and this has such a cool premise for a level. There's a different season, and you basically got to progress through all 4 seasons to get through the level. This one's Spring, which we open up first, and that's where you go into. Now, as a kid, I didn't know what the seasons were. This game literally taught me about seasons and like what order they came in and everything. Every time I had to figure out which season came after which one, I would like visualize Click Clock Wood in my head. Now, after Rusty Bucket Bay, you might think like, oh, this level's pretty chill, it looks like a nice forest, even though it's the last one. But this level's probably maybe on par with the difficulty of Rusty Bucket Bay, if not like a little bit harder, and that's just due to the sheer length of this level. The fact that you have to climb this tree 4 times in Click Clock Wood without falling off and dying does make it very difficult casually. And there's so many places where notes can be that you might just miss them. Because notes are in different spots in different seasons. Autumn has the most notes there, but there are a few in all the other seasons sprinkled around the place. So you have to fully explore this tree 4 times. In each season you find like a little switch to open the next one as well, so you can't just go to any old season at any time. You hatch this bird called Eerie, and then you have to keep like feeding it caterpillars. The Jiggies are kind of cool in this level. There's lots of different things that go on, and they progress through the seasons. So Eerie, we won't get their Jiggy till like the last season here. There's another Jiggy, which is this plant Jiggy, which we saw Goby feeding before actually. As kids, we did not know that you could poop eggs into this hole to start growing the plant. So we were always 1 Jiggy short in Click Clock Wood and had literally just no idea where it was. I had a theory once that you had to kill all the birds around the tree, and then we went and killed every single bird in the level, and yeah, didn't get a Jiggy from that. There's a couple of Jiggies with like really cool premises, like this naughty Jiggy here. You gotta break his boulder in summer while the water's really low and the lake's all dried up. And then when you come back in autumn, you can actually swim up into his house because the boulder's still broken. If you try and get up into his house in summer, it just doesn't work because the slope's way too steep to get up there. You've also got to find all of the acorns for this squirrel Nabnut who's eaten all their acorns during like the spring and the summer. It's actually almost like a little life lesson, I suppose, to the kids, like maybe don't chew through all your resources that you're going to need for hibernation in the winter. But yeah, he's very happy when you find all of his acorns for him. Although these acorns have the absolute worst hit detection ever. Like getting that acorn in the air there is so difficult. Luckily this game does give you a bit of a break in winter and it puts fly pads everywhere to help you get up and down the tree. Maybe they thought they didn't want you dying in literally the last season of the level here. But speaking of dying in the last season, we have this absolutely ridiculous swim here. This is icy water and it takes air twice as fast. So even if you're swimming on the surface, it'll still take air away at the normal rate, and then if you're underneath, it'll take it twice as fast. Rusty Bucket Bay's oily water is actually the same here. So this swim is really scary. You've got to get into Naughty's house to get a honeycomb here. And then you've got to make your way out, remembering where you actually entered the icy water. And you can't just surface on the icy water anywhere. It's like all frozen over except for one little hole. It's definitely a very scary section here. If you know where you're going, then you're fine. But as a kid, if you're just playing this normally, you're like, oh, I'll go and go for a dip. And you'll forget where you actually entered the icy water from. Click Clock Wood has the best transformation in the game. It's the bee. But the unfortunate thing is you see this for about a minute and then it's all done. But in the speedrun, we see the bee for a little bit longer, as we'll talk about. Now, at this point, I am going to talk about spoilers for the end of the game. So if you want to skip those, you want to just skip ahead to the speedrun part in the chapters or the description on the video. So sort of the climax of the game is you get to this thing called Furnace Fun, which is like a huge big quiz show with Grunty. It's really cool. It like tests your knowledge on everything that's happened in the game. You got squares which have like normal questions or picture questions or sound questions or stuff like that. But you've also got these Grunty squares. She asks you to answer facts about herself. Now these facts actually change every playthrough and there's no real good way to predict what the answers are going to be. If you're playing casually, I'd recommend talking to Brentilda, Grunty's sister, and she'll tell you basically what the answers to these questions are going to be. Maybe write them down somewhere. Eventually you'll beat Furnace Fun, Grunty runs away, and you save Tootie. You will celebrate by barbecuing Royston from the second game. Anyway, you realise that you've not done the game yet because Grunty got away, and then you have to go up and beat her. Now this is probably one of the most brutal moments in Banjo-Kazooie. You probably got up to this point maybe not playing much of Click Clock Wood, just you're like, oh, I can get to Furnace Fun, I'll beat the game, whatever. You come across this note door, the 810 note door. That is a very large amount of notes. There's only 900 notes in the game, so you have to get pretty much all of them to beat Banjo-Kazooie. I remember as a kid, I had so much trouble going back and getting the rest of these notes here, because I didn't realise the cap would be that high. Not only do you need most of the notes to beat the game, but then you come across this puzzle, which needs 25 Jiggies to open. So if you 100% the game, you'll only have 6 Jiggies spare after you've done this puzzle here. Very, very tight restrictions. Now, if you get enough notes, you can open this last note door here, the 882 note door, And in it is another puzzle that you can do. Pretty much what this puzzle does is it gives you the red honeycombs. So rather than having a maximum of 8 health, your maximum goes up to 16 health, and it uses color coding to achieve that. It always bothered me as a kid that there were 2 Gs left, and we had so many theories about what those Gs may have been used for. Then you go into Dingpot and you have one of the most awesome ending fights to a game. So you meet Grunty at the top of the tower and you take her on, and this fight is amazing. I remember playing this and like the whole family was around the TV because we've been playing Banjo-Kazooie for weeks or months. We're finally about to beat it. I'm pretty sure it was one of my parents who had to beat this Grunty fight because me and my brother were just not good enough at the game yet. But yeah, this fight just goes on for quite a little while and she's not easy to beat, especially if you don't have that double health upgrade. So I remember playing this for like several weeknights actually, and like each night we'd fire up the Grunty fight, we'd all take turns at it and get like a little bit further each time, and eventually get to this end bit, and eventually we did beat it. It was so exciting the night that we finally beat the Grunty fight. Really, really cool stuff. Now, that's pretty much the base game, and that's where you'd be tempted to end it with your sort of playthrough and investigation of this game. But where I got a lot out of Banjo was actually with all sort of the extra content and stuff around it. As a kid, I just found Grunty's lair like really, really mysterious and wanted to explore every little bit about it. Now, it wasn't until I actually got an action replay that I could answer a lot of these questions, but one question I had, for example, is what happens if you fly up to the top of Grunty's tower from Spiral Mountain? Turns out nothing happens. Probably the biggest mystery we had was what happens in this room if you manage to get up into that little skylight on the roof. This skylight fascinated me so much as a kid. Nowadays I just realized it's to light up this little Grunty thing on the floor there, but I had no idea that's what it was for as a kid. We would have rumors that if you could somehow get up into this skylight, it would let you get to the Grunty fight. Like it would just put you up to the top of the tower there. I even had like dreams about it. Turns out nothing happens if you get out the skylight. But it wasn't until we had an action replay that we could actually find that out for ourselves. Before having an action replay, we would do all sorts of like crazy jumps off this shock spring pad or the Clanker's puzzle area, just trying to get up to that skylight. Obviously having absolutely no luck getting that high with Banjo. Keeping on with this theme, in the Red Cauldron room, we always wondered what was behind this little pipe grate here. Turns out there's nothing, yet again. Also, in the FP room, we were very, very fascinated by this hole in the wall here. The theory was that there would be a 4th Cheeto book, which would give you a cheat for infinite lives. And the theory was if you could get the pumpkin into this room, we might be able to squeeze through that hole and get to the Cheeto page. Yeah, turns out that theory was also not true. Leading on from this, we would always wonder who the enemies are on the walls of Grunty's lair, because a lot of them weren't in the final game. And in this room in particular, we would always wonder what the heck is behind this door here, and not to mention the door literally on the other side of the room. Neither of these doors actually go anywhere. Anyway, it turns out if you can get behind the door here, there's like a little hallway here, and if you fall down the hallway there, well, nothing really happens. Now, I know there's been some mysteries about out of bounds in this room. There's like this weird stuff under the floor here. Turns out it's just the lock from the door once you open the door of Grunty there. They just store it under the room. Not to mention a lot of people have questions about this weird door under the sandcastle there. That door is just for when you play the Firm's Fun minigame and it needs to lock you in the sandcastle. Now, Grunty's lair was mysterious, but the levels were also pretty mysterious as well. I remember as a kid, for some reason, we thought that in the background of Gobies, we could see just like a faint outline of like a Mumbo skull in the distance. And the theory was that if you could get out to that Mumbo skull, he would turn you into like a snake, and then you would just walk around as a snake in the level and do all sorts of cool things. That theory, obviously not true. I don't know why we thought we could see a Mumbo skull, but we definitely could. And Gobies also has other weird things, like this locked door. But, you know, with the theme of this game, locked doors tend to just not have really anything behind them. So you can get behind this door and sort of check it out, but... Oh, geez, alright, cool, there's a room behind here. So there's a few different glitches to get into this room, and if you do it, you'll come to this sarcophagus and open it up. And hey, there's an egg inside. This is called Stop and Swap. Now, I know a lot of people already know about this, but this was so mysterious when I was a kid. Also, if you get the egg, it'll come up on your total screen just after there, and you'll get a whole big list of all the ones you've got. And there are a few different ones over the game, like this ice key here that you can see through the glass, but you can't get. Now, we weren't too surprised to find out that there were these stop and swap eggs, because if you 100% the game, we'll get 100 jiggies. Mumbo will show you some pictures of where to find some of these eggs. He'll show you 2 of the eggs and the ice key, but there's actually 6 eggs all up. So people did know about stop and swap, but it was very unclear how you would actually get these stop and swap eggs, because Mumbo gives you no instructions on how to actually raise that island and get it. Banjo has one of my favourite lines here, core, a giant ice key. I don't know why, I just really like it. And Mumbo pretty much says that you'll be able to get these instructions to get these eggs from Banjo-Tooie the next game, and that's where you'll find out how to open up these doors. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about it for time reasons, and there's a lot of other videos on the subject, but for technical reasons, that Banjo-Tooie connection never really happened. You can get the eggs in Banjo-Tooie, but it's kind of underwhelming in the way that you do it. But this brings us back to the sandcastle floor. This is the one where we entered the words Banjo-Kazooie before on the floor, but you can also use it to enter cheats, and you can find Cheeto throughout the game who will give you a few that you're supposed to know about. Now, if you data mine the game, you can find a lot of cheats beyond the normal Cheeto cheats here. A lot of them just open levels or do silly stuff in the lair, like the one that looks like it's going to raise the water level just breaks the gate towards the water level switch, which you can just peck anyway. Some of these cheats are absolutely pointless. But some really interesting cheats that you see are these ones here, which happen to unlock these stop and swap items. Now, these stop and swap codes were actually found by the Rare Witch project originally, and these posts come all the way back from the early 2000s. I can't find the post for the original codes, but it appears they appeared in 2001, because there's this post here talking about them releasing the stop and swap codes. I remember when these codes came out. We didn't have the internet at home, so we had to go either to the library or like a friend's house who had the internet. We looked them up and we got our old cheats book and filled them up with stop and swap codes. Now, I actually still have this original cheats book here. It's a wonderful, wonderful time capsule from the early 2000s. So yeah, some of these codes were taken way back in the day, and there's some absolute bangers in there, such as Get Raichu in Super Smash Bros. Definitely a reputable glitch, and also the F-Zero X track. There's a few other great ones in here, like trying to make Captain Falcon fart and stuff like that. But if you scroll through past it, you eventually get to these wonderful, wonderful banjo codes, which is what I want to talk about here. And there they are, back from 2001. You've got all your gems like the tech skip and everything, moon jump to get the ice key. But right in there, we got the lovely stop and swap codes. We were obviously so inspired as well that we wrote our own codes into this cheat book, and we were also inspired to write the fake ones, like unlock Waluigi. I'll leave a few more of these on screen in case you want to have a look. Some of them are absolute bangers. Anyway, if you enter these codes in Banjo, then you do get the stop and swap eggs. It sort of opens up whatever area is appropriate for them. And I remember the night that we did this. It was so hype. We entered all the codes, got all the eggs, and it was amazing. The only kind of downside is that getting the eggs will stay permanently on your cartridge, so you can only ever do this once. It's weird how it kind of locks it in like that. And just while we're on extra content, there's also these bottles bonus puzzles that you can do. They give you some more cheat codes that you can get. They pretty much just let you play as like the washing machine, or some hilarious stuff like Stretch Banjo here. I call this one Limo Banjo. Now, I could talk for days about this game, but I'm going to stop myself there. All I'm going to say is play it. If you haven't played it, play it. It's really, really good. Now let's talk about the speedrun. Now, the speedrun community for this game is huge. There's so many people who run 100%, and there's a lot who run the other categories here. 100% is definitely the more well-known category, but any percent is absolutely my favorite here. I'll talk a bit why once we get into them. Not only do you have these categories on N64, you have other categories on Xbox that are really good. Very different tech used in both these. And you've also got a whole bunch of missed categories here. Sandcastle percent here I really like because it's the absolute fastest version to beat the game if you allow cheats. This one's on the category extensions if you're looking for it. But a lot of these are really fun, and some of those meme categories I was talking about, like all honeycombs, are on here as well. Now, I would personally consider Banjo to be like my main speed game. Over the years, I've held the world record in any percent quite a few times. We've traded it back and forth. Currently the world records come a lot lower, mainly thanks to something called bit clips that have been introduced. But I've actually been getting back into it a bit more lately and playing it again, PBing 4 days ago. There's still a lot of room that I can have coming down there, so maybe I'll do some more runs sometime soon. But for now, I'm focusing again in on 100% because I'm just about to run it at the Australian Speed Marathon, ASM 2024. There's a big reason why I'm making this video now, and I've been enjoying getting back into 100% a lot lately, although any percent is a little bit better in my opinion. Now, rather than talking about the runs in particular, I'm going to try and focus on general tech, otherwise I'll be here all day. Walking's slow. You want to talent trot, it's quite a bit faster. In talent trot, you want to jump, because Banjo will take a little while to speed up into full speed from talent trot, but if you jump, Banjo hits full speed. If you try and move during your jump, Banjo is going to slow down a lot, so whenever you're jumping, you want to keep a straight line, and for that reason, you want to probably do smaller jumps rather than bigger jumps if you can, because that way you can change your direction more frequently. If you're in talent trot and need to get out, normally what happens is you have to do that really slow exit animation, but you can just peck to get out of talent trot, and even better than that, you can peck onto the ground. If you don't have talent trot, you want to roll, because rolling's faster, but rolling has a similar issue, it's slow at the end of the animation, so you flutter out of the roll. If you can time it really well, you can get something called a flutter cancel, which is basically Banjo flutters into the ground. It's kind of hard to pull off, especially on an emulator like this. If you're going up hills, you want to jump up hills, because that way you get Banjo's airspeed. If you're going down hills, you want to run down hills, because that way you get a little bit of boosted speed down the hills. You'll notice that jumping is a very large part of this game, so you're just going to hear roo, roo, roo all through the speedruns, over and over again. You do get used to it after a while. If you fall off somewhere, you're going to take full damage if Banjo falls too far. If you want to avoid this, a really easy way to do this is something called ground pound recoiling, where you ground pound, and in the recoil animation you fall off the edge. I remember reading an old cheat site in that book which said you ground pound off an edge, and that is definitely not the way to avoid full damage. If you're playing on the N64 version, clicking the C buttons will move the camera a certain amount each time. If you're playing on the Xbox version, it's a lot smoother. Again, another reason why Xbox is pretty good. If you want more precision on N64, you can hit the R button and the camera will just go behind wherever Banjo is facing. A really good technique is to crouch down and hold the R button to go wherever way you want to really face. If you're swimming, you want to hold the R button, you'll get a very tight turning circle here. Also, you can just hold down the B button to move fast when you're swimming, you don't need to press the B button. If I let go of the R button, you'll see how wide Banjo's turning circle goes. He goes straight into the boat, so it's not just a visual effect. Same thing also goes for flying. You want to hold the R button, you'll get a nice tight turning circle. If you let go, Banjo will widen his turning circle quite a bit. Flying also has a move called Beak Bump. Basically, you just press B while you're flying and Banjo flies forward really quickly. You can also peck out of it if you need to. That's quick movement right there. If you ever run into text in this game, you always want to hold L, R, and B to skip the text, unless you're playing on the Xbox version. Some text you can skip with just B. Some text you do have to actually read through no matter what, and this text is one example. Other examples are Vile and the start of the buggy race. There's this glitch called a quick dive, so basically rather than trying to dive under the water like normal, you can actually get really deep into the water by jumping off the edge in talent trot and letting go of the Z button. Banjo dives very, very deep, it's used all over the run. There's a couple of variations on this, like the gold feather diving. And not to mention this really cool thing you can do where you can actually stay underwater forever firing eggs. I love doing this. You got other optimizations like G grabbing. If you grab one in talent trot, Banjo does a little animation, but if you grab one by pecking at it, Banjo does it right away. And this difference actually becomes really obvious if there's an enemy near you as well. So if you grab it in talent trot, you can still very much get hit by the enemies while that little animation is going on. Speaking of getting into talent trot, if you're ever in a situation where you're not in talent trot right near a loading zone, rather than watching the whole animation of going in, you can go into the loading zone and try and get in talent trot there. Sometimes it takes a few goes, but if you get used to it, then you get used to hitting talent trot right on that loading zone transition. Like that. You can actually use Banjo's ground pound ability to your advantage. I know a similar thing happens in SM64. So for example here we can't jump out of this little area here, but if we ground pound, Banjo gets a bit of a height boost there, so you can just get a height boost up into the loading zone. You actually use this ground pound mechanic to do a skip. So normally in Ticker's Tower you would fall off that slippery slope, but on the power version you can high jump up here and just ground pound straight through the vines. Now this kind of skip is actually quite common with any collision that's two-sided, so it pushes you out from both directions like the vines, or this window and engine room for example. If you run up against that window for long enough, you'll actually clip through. It's called window clip. I think it was found in about 2002 and it's one of the earliest glitches found on this game. Coming back to Tigger's Tower, that high jump method is not the only way to skip this. There's something called a slope timer in this game, and it goes up when you go over slopes. So this slope you can just walk on normally, that won't trigger the slope timer, something like this will. So the slope timer climbs all the way up to 1, and if it is 1, you will slip off the slope. And depending how steep the slope is, you might slip off right away, like this slope over here, or you might slip off only if you're not in Talon Trop. So there's varying levels of steepness here. But basically this slope here we can stand on for a little bit, and then we're going to slip straight off it, because the termite is supposed to go up that slope, not Banjo. But what you can do is you can basically just not be over the slope for very long. The slope timer resets every time you go over flat ground, so if I do this, for example, I can just keep jumping on and off the slope, back and forth, and I won't really be slipping off. As long as you're over flat ground, you're normally fine and that slope timer resets. Once you understand that concept, it's not too hard to get up Tigger's Tower without actually needing the termite there. It saves 5 Mumbo tokens, and probably more importantly, it saves a whole bunch of time needing to transform into the termite. So that glitch is called Termite Skip, and it actually only works on the PAL version of the game or the US version 1.0 of the game. Rare found Termite glitch back when the game was still in production and made a revision cartridge which patched the glitch out. The funny thing is Rare only patched out the slope timer by making the slope timer go up to 1 in Tigger's Tower. Doing this slope glitch outside of Mumbos to get the Jiggy at the top still works absolutely fine on all versions of the game. Now, it is actually possible to do Termite Skip on all versions of the game, including Xbox where it's patched out, using something called frame-perfect Talon Trot jumps, but it's pretty hard, mainly TAS only if you want to get it at all consistently here. Now, there's a handful of obscure glitches that aren't really used in RTA runs, for example, Jiggy despawn, where you die with a Jiggy in your hand. Then if you grab the next Jiggy without having the Jiggy Jig, you have the light, well, any object really, just completely disappear, and you can sort of manipulate which object that's going to be. It's pretty limited in its use case, but that's a pretty cool glitch. Speaking of skipping Jiggy Jigs, there's actually a few ways you can do it outside of that Jiggy despawn glitch. So one way you can do it is just by swimming into a Jiggy. Flying into the Jiggy will also skip the Jiggy Jig. You can skip Jiggy Jigs with wading boots. And you can skip them with running shoes. You can skip it by getting hit on the same frame you grab the Jiggy, although this is pretty difficult to do. You can skip Jiggies by being a transformation. And these transformations do include the washing machine. One time I tried to reroute no RBA using the washing machine to skip a bunch of Jiggy Jigs, and it actually almost ended up being pretty fast. Unfortunately, washing machine for 100% is quite slow because you got to do the bottles bonus puzzles, but also there's a bunch of stuff you can't do with the washing machine. You can skip Jiggy Jigs by strategically jumping into the water with a Jiggy, like so. Banjo will hold the Jiggy for a little while, but as soon as you jump back into the water, he'll get the Jiggy without the Jig there. You can trick the game into thinking Banjo's still in the water by jumping out of the water into a Jiggy. There's also another quite obscure Jiggy Jig skip. If you hit an enemy, then that angle is sort of stored. And whatever the next Jiggy you spawn is will come out of that same angle you hit the enemy on. Now, if you can arrange it properly, you can get a second Jiggy to fall into that same position as the first Jiggy. And then you have both Jiggies sitting on top of each other. What can you do with two Jiggies sitting on top of each other? Well, you can jump into them and grab both at once, essentially skipping one of the two Jiggy Jigs. You can skip a Jiggy Jig by dying with the Jiggy in your hand. And this actually causes major issues in any percent, because if you die with the Jiggy in your hand, this is the last Jiggy. It then sets you up for that Jiggy despawn glitch, and you can very easily crash the game by grabbing another Jiggy in any percent. And although it's not directly skipping a Jiggy, you can grab a Jiggy during a cutscene, and then you're saving some time because you're watching the Jiggy Jig while also watching the cutscene, not waiting for one to end for the other to start. Now you might be thinking all these Jiggy skips are a bit excessive, but remember every Jiggy Jig is 4.5 seconds, and if it's the last Jiggy in the level, it's actually like 8.5 seconds, so it's definitely worth saving this time if you can. One thing that I think would be really cool to find is a way to skip jiggy jigs without having any external things like flying or swimming or running shoes. So far I've tried a lot of methods, but I haven't actually been able to figure out a way to do this, but some other games have similar methods. See, in theory I would like to find something like DK64 has, where you can skip pretty much every banana dance with oranges. It'd be nice for BK, but I don't see it happening anytime soon without some breakthroughs. Okay, so that was all the small tricks done. Now we're going to move on to talking about the specific categories on the game, and I'll start with any percent here. So any percent is pretty limited by the 810 note door. We don't have any RTA viable way to skip this note door. We can't really get past it, so we have to get 810 notes. Also, given there's 100 notes in each level and 9 levels, we have to go into every single level in order to get this. Now for this reason, it's jiggies that are really cut in the any percent run. So notes are cumulative, you need 810 to get the 810 note door, but every door, like Door of Grunty for example here, this one just needs 25 jiggies to open. You don't need to hit a certain amount, you just need to give 25 jiggies to the puzzle. A legendary glitch hunter named Chronicies found something called Door of Grunty skip. And Chronicies found a whole bunch of stuff in the game. This is probably one of the biggest finds from the game. Basically, the way this works is you can run up against Door of Grunty and eventually Banjo will clip out of bounds through the ground. Now Banjo just falls out of bounds and nothing really interesting happens. Now there's setups for this, but if you wait 6 clocks and jump, you can actually get behind the door. Now that jump is a frame perfect trick, so it's really difficult to pull off and it's right at the end of the run, but if you do get it, that saves you 25 jiggies in any percent. Now before I talk about the next glitch, I need to talk about something called FFM. It stands for Furnace Fun Moves. And essentially, if you die in a Furnace Fun minigame, it sort of stores Banjo's moves. Up until Mumbo's you don't get them, which is why you see Banjo rolling here. But then as soon as you enter a loading zone from the lair, like entering Mumbo's Mountain, Banjo just gets all those moves from that file. So in speedruns, people tend to do FFM. They learn almost every move in the game except for usually eggs and feathers. And the reason you don't want to learn eggs and feathers is because when you talk to Bottles to learn those moves, he gives you a refill of eggs and feathers. You still want that. In any percent, we do learn eggs in FFM, just because it's a little bit faster to not learn those from Bottles and just pick up random eggs across the run. Now, the reason I bring up FFM is for a glitch called Frazizi Peak Early. So essentially, this was found by Chronicies again, but originally as a way to skip the 450 note door. But with FFM, we can also use it to clip into Frazizi Peak. The awkward thing is, you need the Beak Bomb move to do this glitch, and you get the Beak Bomb move from Frazizi Peak. That's why we need FFM to do it. But basically what happens is Banjo goes down onto this ledge and clips through. You can clip through ledges like that if you have enough downward speed, either through a Beak Bomb or by sort of falling onto the ledge. But by doing it in flying, you can fly then under the door of FB, which saves us another 8 jiggies in any percent. Now next up we have a really huge glitch for Banjo speedruns. It's called Reverse B Adventure. Once again, the original method was found by Chronicies, but there's been a few different methods by a few different people found over the years. This method here is a method to do it as fast as possible on the NTSC and 64 version. There's a separate method for Power and a separate method for Xbox, and then a fourth method which is really hard but works on all versions. Alright, so we got the B out of the Click Clock Wood area. This skips de-transforming from Mumbo. Normally he forces you to turn back into Banjo for leaving that room. But if we can get into the Rusty Bucket Bay lobby with the B, then we can literally just fly over the wall because they didn't put a roof on this room, and then straight into Rusty Bucket Bay, saving another 12 jiggies in any percent. And once we're done in there, why not just keep the B and just fly straight into the top of Gobi's Valley, and then we save opening that as well, saving another 9 jiggies. I'll mention that this B stuff is really good for any percent because the B can run around grabbing notes, but it wouldn't help as much in 100% because the B can't grab like all of the jiggies in Gobi's Valley, so you'd still need to come in here as Banjo. Now while we're on the topic, the B can also get into Bubble Gloop Swamp. Pretty much what you do is you just fly at the door and you get up through that roof. It's kind of hard not to fall up through the top of the roof, but if you do it correctly, you save another 7 jiggies and get into Bubble Gloop Swamp. There's a separate method of that works on Xbox. You can kind of like fly over the roof to get in there. Now you might be wondering, why don't we just do all the levels as a B, like just go to Click Clock Wood, get the B and do everything. That would be incredibly fast if we could do it, but the issue is you need to raise the water level with Banjo, and to do that you need to go into Mad Monster Mansion because you need the pumpkin. So the water level is one of the biggest barriers in any percent at the moment, and I made a whole video about all the potential ways we could skip this. But right now in both RTA and TAS it's not possible to skip this switch, so we need to hit it. And the other factor stopping us from getting to Click Lock Wood earlier is this 260 note door here. It would be really nice if we could skip this note door. We can in TAS but not RTA, so we're limited to doing at least 3 levels before we get into Mad Monster Mansion. And we do FP as well before getting into Mad Monster Mansion, because it's quicker to do it with Banjo and FP early. But that's not the end of the Jiggy saving journey yet. Sort of the next glitch that was found was called TTC early. Basically, Chronikies originally found this and thought it was an emulator glitch, so it sort of didn't go anywhere. Since that, I had a look on console and managed to find some new camera setups and found that it was possible on console as well as emulator. So that saves us another 2 Jiggies. You clip into the can and you swim underneath TTC. It is very tricky to do this glitch, because if we go back to like where Banjo's swimming in, there's no water under the chest itself, so you sort of have to flutter across. If you're too low, you don't get into the chest, and if you're too high, you go above ground, so you have to have exactly the right height there. Now, for a really long time, that's where any percent sat, and that was sort of the time when I was the most into it and was trading back and forth world record. But then a runner called Falcon found this glitch, which we now call a bit clip. But in Banjo-Tooie, you can actually get these bit clips by walking up and down just normally here. In Banjo-Kazooie, it's a little bit more complicated to get them. This is the first time we knew about a bit clip happening, and since then I did some science to figure out sort of what was going on behind the bit clips. Essentially what's going on behind there is Banjo is falling through incredibly tiny gaps in the floor, and if you know what you're doing, you can plan ahead and make sure Banjo hits these gaps. The gaps are floating point precise, so if you look at like a pixel on screen, the gaps are probably like 1/10,000th of a pixel wide. This trick is incredibly precise to fall through the floor. So after Falcon found these bit clips, I did a lot of legwork, sort of figuring out why they work, figuring out how to get them in Banjo-Kazooie rather than Banjo-Tooie. And a lot of it involved sort of like pause buffering to stop where you're moving, moving in very particular ways, turning the camera left and right. So essentially with these camera turns, what happens is whenever you're in first person as Banjo and you're holding a direction, Banjo moves 3 degrees at a time. So if you look at this turn, for example, you're aiming for a particular pause frame, and then you want to turn to that, and then you aim for another turn here. Then the way that it works is you want to do something called like punch cancels or beak barges to gradually adjust Banjo's movement in very predictable ways. And if you plan it out perfectly, you'll get yourself onto the bit clip setup. So this setup that you're looking at now is a setup that Ringrush found. It is faster than the original setups I managed to find for bit clips, and these are the ones currently used in runs. My original setup had Banjo beak barging up to these steps, and it was quite slow. So it's good to see these new setups by Ringrush using Talentra and sort of faster methods to do here. So a lot of the fundamentals are the same for the original stuff that I found, but it's a lot quicker, and Ringrush has taken a different and much faster approach to find these. But at the heart of any bit clip setup you'll see in Banjo-Kazooie or Tooie, it's going to be doing these things that we call twirly whirlies, which is like pausing and twirling around until we hit particular setup frames. Usually a lot of punch cancels, and just adjusting your position very gradually until you get the bit clips to work. When Banjo does get the bit clips, what it looks like is you'll see his shadow disappear from him under the floor. That means he's over the spot where there's like a little hole in the ground. And if you ground pound through that from a high enough point, you can actually just get through the ground. And for example, this is how we get into Mad Monster Mansion here. Just like that. At any rate, getting into Mad Monster Mansion there saves us another 10 Jiggies. Now, along with Mad Monster Mansion, we also use a bit clip to get into Click Lock Wood. This one, we start from the switch spawning the Click Lock Wood puzzle, and there's a really good reason for that. Any lag frames that you get will completely destroy a bit clip setup because it causes Banjo to be in sort of unpredictable positions. So by going from the little puzzle switch there, we're not getting any lag frames to pop up. Instead, we're just completely looking at the wall, which is a very non-laggy area. So if you do that all right, then you should be able to get up here to Click Lock Wood and then go through with the bit clip setup. So essentially what all these setups entail is that you're looking for like a particular spot of your pause menu HUD to be lined up with a particular tree on the wall. So yeah, for example, here you're looking for that tree to be on the edge of screen, and then you just do the movement however it is. This setup usually takes a little bit longer than Mad Monster Mansion early, but when you get it, that's another 15 Jiggies saved in any percent. So Click Lockwood Early actually has 3 different setups, and it depends exactly when you get the pause frame from running up to it in Talon Trot. The good thing about having a few backups is even if you don't get the exact pause frame you wanted, if you're like a frame forward or a frame behind, you can still do the bit clip setup and get through. Otherwise it would be a frame perfect trick that you have to hit in order to do the run. So I haven't really properly been into Banjo speedrunning since bit clips came out. I actually have been a little bit lately getting ready for this marathon. They're a very interesting thing. A lot of old runners actually struggle with them because they're sort of a newer concept. But I think for a new runner, they're not too bad to learn because it's just like twirl right, do a bear punch cancel, do this, do that. Compared to something like a dog skip where you've got really important timing and everything. It's a lot more like fuel based with dog skip, whereas bit clips are a lot more memory based. But both are pretty tricky to pull off and pretty impressive when runners can do it. Anyway, what that leaves us with is Any% taking 6 jiggies in total to complete. So that's the 1 jiggy to open Mumbo's Mountain, and then the 5 jiggies to open Clanker's Cavern. Now, there is a 1 jiggy Any% route, but that is, I think it's technically a second faster, but it's insanely more difficult, and you're more likely to lose time if you try it. That other Any% route does a bit clip into Bubble Gloop Swamp, and then takes the B into Clankers to skip the other 5 jiggies. But regardless, you still have to do 3 levels before the 260 note door, so you've got to do either Bubble Gloop or Clankers as Banjo. You can't do both as B. And one of my favourite parts of running Any% over the years has been this little ending cutscene where Mumbo asks if you get 100 jiggies, and now Banjo literally says, we only got 6 of them, and if you really want to, you can make that say you only got 1 of them. And in a Taz, you can make it say 0 if you really want to. Now, I've talked about the route overall, but I think I'll just point out each individual level for Asmi's world record in 59:41. Huge congrats on the sub 1, by the way. Very cool to see. So Spiral Mountain, you just zoom through, you don't worry about any honeycombs. One thing I will mention is we do a trick called Bottle Skip, so you basically just jump there and avoid Bottle's trigger. That's evolved over the years. It used to be a high jump, now it's like a jump across. Pretty cool trick. Saves about 3 or 4 seconds. Mumbo's Mountain is really just zooming around grabbing notes and a handful of jiggies. We just get 2 in this route because the TTC jiggies are a lot faster to get the 5 needed to open Clankers. It's a bit of a trade-off actually, because if you got 5 jiggies in Mumbo's, you could open Clankers on the way through the room the first time, but by getting them in TTC instead, you have to do a bit of backtracking, but it is worth it overall. And you'll notice with Any%, basically all we're grabbing is notes really, and Mumbo tokens, because we need 45 Mumbo tokens, 20 for the pumpkin, 25 for the bee, but the real big thing is notes. We need 810, so that's the main thing we're going to be getting here. You see the termite skip that I mentioned before, making use of that slope timer just to grab the 6 notes up here. Asmi does the TTC early to save 2 jiggies, and makes their way in and starts collecting a whole bunch of notes in there as well. So because there's a lot of flying and a lot of water, that's why the TTC jiggies are often quite a lot faster. We get that one, we get another one in the water, and we get one with a death warp, so it does save time over getting them in Mumbos. One little trick to mention here is Nipper Skip. You can get inside Nipper's hitbox there and defeat him without really having to fight him normally. It saves quite a bit of time. Asmi heads back to open Clanker's Cavern normally now. It'd be cool if we could find a way in there early as Banjo. There is a way which is Taz only, but it's not really possible RTO. Now in both Any% and 100%, Clanker's Cavern has a really annoying jump at the start. It's just this one here. And that jump has a slope timer on that slope, so you will slip off if you spend too long hovering over it. And then Asmi's doing some very tight movement to get something called Phantom Bubble. So what Phantom Bubble is it's when you come down to Gloop here, and Gloop does spit out this bubble here. It's really quick to grab this bubble because you literally just grab it on the way down to the note, so it costs you no time at all. Getting Phantom Bubble is quite tricky. You need very tight movement through, and it can make or break whether or not you get a cycle on Clankers. When you're with Clanker, his bolt is going up and down, so you may gain or lose time in multiples of 10 seconds. It's almost a bit like a frame rule or something if you're familiar with that concept. Now this is the point where Any% looks very weird because we just start like jumping over G's and not getting them at all like that. And we actually have to learn Gold Feathers in this room. So it would be optimal if we could learn Gold Feathers in FFM, like in that file, but there's actually no way to learn Gold Feathers without knowing flying, and we definitely don't want flying in FFM. So it's a bit weird that it works out like that, but hey, learning Gold Feathers there just loses about 2 seconds, so it's not a big deal. Asmi takes a Death Warp in Clanker's mouth, and most Banjo levels will end on a Death Warp. So it saves time over just walking all the way back to the start of Clankers, but it has a secondary benefit of putting you back to full health for whenever you want to do the next level. We do FP early to get in there and save a bunch of Gs, and then just go around and get all 100 notes in FP. This beak bomb can be pretty risky here, so Banjo pecks out of the beak bomb there. If you peck too early or you're not flying high enough, you'll peck and then like fall back down the hat without getting onto the top of it. But pecking does save quite a lot of time because it stops you having to slowly land and stuff like that. So there's definitely a trade-off there involved with that. Here we have a very iconic part of any percent. We got the water notes here. So it is possible to get these notes while only taking 3 damage, but it's quite difficult to do. You just have to get your flutter timing right and everything. If you don't do it, then you have a backup. You can actually bear punch the snowballs that they're throwing to get another health, because you need another health to get across this lake. Or the other option for your backup is you can sort of jump at the note backwards in Talontrot and get it. I only found that a few days ago, that backup. If you're curious, the backup sort of looks like this. Pretty fast backup over bear punching the snowball. Now there's a very cool subtle strat in Mumbo's skull here. You got to get the notes up the top and then take a death warp, but we do a beak barge into the flame here. What that does is it makes Banjo fall into Mumbo's sort of radius to trigger the text box there. And pretty much what you do is you clear Mumbo's text box off while Banjo's dying, and that means when you see Mumbo for the first real time that you want to transform, you don't have to go through those text boxes. Saves a couple seconds, and it's a cool little setup that Mittens found a few years ago, and it really helped out, because that was one of the most inconsistent parts of the run before that setup. We were basically just trying to run off into the flame, and it didn't work very well. Asmi does the big clip into Mad Monster Mansion using the earlier frame setup, which is slightly faster than that one I showed before. It's sort of a bit of, well, not luck, but a bit of timing as to which one you end up getting, and the earlier frame is faster here. So we zoom through MMM and get the pumpkin ready for the water switch. One thing that I will mention is you can crash the game here at any percent. You gotta hold forward and avoid the jiggy. If you don't do that, then you grab the jiggy and you crash the game. So the reason for that is the last jiggy grabbed in any percent is the one where you die with it in your hand in Treasure Trove Cove. So it sets up one of those jiggy despawn glitches. And pretty much what happens if you grab that jiggy is that it tries to despawn something in that little room. There's nothing to despawn, so the game just crashes. So yeah, you got to be careful in 80%. There's a couple spots like that where you can accidentally grab a jiggy not meaning to. Then we just go through and raise the water level. It would be really nice if we could skip this in the run somehow. Asmi then goes up to do Click Clock Wood early. We head through and do Spring, Summer and Autumn. Doing Winter here isn't really worth it because there's not many notes in there and you'd have to open up Winter by going to the top of the tree in Autumn. After we got enough notes in Click Clock Wood, we come back into Spring, grab the bee, and do Reverse Bee Adventure. Now here's where any percent gets really, really fun. When I was running it, I guess more often, I sort of had a niche of being the bee movement guy. A lot of people are quite skilled at bee movement these days, and Asmi pulls off a really impressive display here. So with the B, you want to hold the B button to go fast. You also want to hold the R button because you're flying. And if you want a slow flight, you just let go of B. You can see here Asmi getting a whole bunch of notes in flying, which is really, really impressive and not easy to do. If you land as the B, it's not too bad. You just fly again. But walking with the B is quite slow, so you want to grab as much as you can in flying. Here we have a nice little clip in the engine room here up through that roof there. That clip used to give us a lot of trouble, but now we sort of have a really good setup for it. And then just going through and grabbing these notes. So you can probably immediately see why bringing the B into a level like this is really fast for any percent, because Banjo grabs these notes fairly slowly. The B can just fly around to the notes, grab them and then move on. There's a couple really cool make or break moments in Rusty Bucket Bay, like trying to grab these 3 notes without landing. And dealing with this blue box with the jumpers. These jumpers can be incredibly scary. They take 2 damage every time they hit you. You only have 5 health, so you can take 3 hit. The third hit you would be dead. And there's no way to actually get any more health as the bee, because the bee can't attack that beehive to grab health. So yeah, here Asmi's on 1 health, so the rest of the level is going to be pretty scary for that reason. Asmi does a void out rather than a death warp. This basically brings you back to the start of the level, but without causing you to lose a life or your notes. And part of the reason for that is we actually want to be on 1 health here, because Asmi's going to take a death at the end of Gobi's Valley. Clip into Gobi's Valley, and then we immediately get the 5 notes at the start of the level. These notes can be a little bit tricky to grab, but basically what you got to do once you yourself get the first one is just fly up through the rest. So going through these sand notes, again, they're pretty tricky to grab in flight, but you can sort of wedge yourself on the wall and manipulate your height very, very carefully to get your way through. Normally with Banjo, clipping through Jinxie is very difficult here, but with the B you can just pretty much walk straight through and then just go into this room. This next room inside Jinxie is one of the more fun rooms. You've got to get all these 3 notes in flying, and make sure you turn before you get this jiggy, otherwise you crash the game. The rest of Gobies has some really cool sections, like getting all 4 of these notes without landing. The B routes have developed gradually over time. They're very different compared to where I started running them in any %, and a lot of it is just trying to get more and more stuff in flying without landing. And then to a whole new extent, if you look at some of the Taz B movement, that's even wilder because they can just grab pretty much everything in flying. You can see here Asmi trying a little strategy with like grabbing the notes in flying there rather than walking across this bit slowly, and it seems to pay off pretty well. Now this bit of the run's actually funny. We need to get out of bounds here. We used to do a clip off the stop and swap door, and if it was open the clip wouldn't work, so you had to make sure your cartridge hadn't done stop and swap before you did the run. Now that we clip off just that top frame bit of the door, it actually doesn't matter whether or not you've done stop and swap. So Asmi just clips through there and gets into this last room of the run where we do a death walk. Bubble Gloop Swamp is very much the same story here. You're just trying to get as much as you can in flying without landing. So the B movement I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite parts of any %. I've thought for many years about why any % may be less popular than 100%, and I think part of the reason would be the B movement. I'm sure people who are more familiar with the game, like from playing it originally, would prefer to do this level with Banjo than as the B. But once you get used to it, it is very fun to do this movement as the B. I think another big reason why any % is a bit less popular is because traditionally it was only possible on the PAL version of the game, which is great because I have the PAL version of the game living in Australia, but not great for everyone else in America or Japan who wanted to run any %. But I'm hoping to see a bit more attention onto it in years to come. Anyway, once Asmi's done this, we have a pretty tense escape from this room. Essentially, if you try and walk out this room normally, the bee will get caught by the detransformation trigger. It's supposed to detransform you from the crocodile, but it will detransform you from the bee as well if it catches you just back to Banjo, so you have to fly around it out of bounds. Essentially, here we fly up through the ledge just to get back to Furnace Fun. You can see here 810 notes when we hit that note door, so Asmi's planned it out perfectly. And it is absolutely heartbreaking if you ever get up to that door and it says like 809 because you accidentally missed one. Luckily that doesn't happen too much because it's pretty obvious if you've missed a note. Now we've got Furnace Fun here, and I talked about this in the casual section, but basically you got to go through the quiz board and get all the way right to the end. But we do have a skip called an Impulse Skip. Now, there are a few different skips over the years. Originally, Furnace Fun skip was much slower, but this skip is currently the quickest RTA viable method. Although I have found one that's, well, in collaboration with Hyper and Cole, I've found one that's faster in Taz, which we'll talk about later. So basically, these death squares, they throw you off the board and kill you when you get one wrong. But if you can answer one while being in Talon Trot, it doesn't quite put you off the board correctly. So we just get into Talon Trot here, answer it, and it doesn't fling Banjo off the board. Instead, it lets you sort of just go forward and on your merry old way. The only time that it doesn't do that is if you get a picture question, which I believe is a 20% chance or something like that. But anyway, if you get a picture question, you fail an impulse skip, and then it loses you a whole bunch of time. From here, Asmi makes their way up towards Door of Grunty and then takes on Door of Grunty skip. I'll reiterate that Door of Grunty skip is a frame-perfect trick. It is very hard to pull off if you're not used to it. Pretty much what you got to do is set your camera up like this, do 6 trots to the right, and make your way up through Door of Grunty by getting a jump on the correct frame. Even if you get the jump, you need to still do the correct navigation on your joystick, getting around the door and everything like that. So it's not easy to get it first try, and if you fail it, you will fall out of bounds like that, which unfortunately happened to Asmi in this run, but Asmi did manage to recover and get Door of Grunty skip pretty quickly after that. It's quite a brutal thing to do at the end of the any % run, but I don't know, I really like this trick now because I've been doing it for years. It's inconsistent, but it adds a little bit of fun to it. So when Asmi gets the Door of Grunty skip successfully, it's sort of going to look like this, do the 6 trots down there, and then jump up through the door. If you're not used to it, you can do a peck out of Talon Trot there to make sure you actually land on the ground. But once you're more used to Door of Grunty, you can just stay in Talon Trot and save yourself that extra bit of time. You might also notice that Asmi pecked the note door for the egg refill, and that just works. The egg hitbox is big enough that you peck through it and you just get it. And then we have the Grunty fight here. So the first phase of the Grunty fight is sort of skipped in a sense. You're supposed to peck Grunty, when she comes back towards you. But if you poop out a whole bunch of eggs, all those eggs will hit Grunty the 4 times that you need to hit her right away. And it saves her doing 4 cycles where you need to peck her. Then she just goes around the border and you have to hit her with 3 eggs each time. Then we probably have the hardest part of the Grunty fight, which is actually getting these beak bombs here. So you got to beak bomb her 4 times, and it's very easy to miss the beak bombs. If you miss them, then you sort of go all the way across the edge of the map and have to work your way back towards Grunty. There's also a golden rule in this fight: never ever ever beak bomb down, because if you do, you might hit the ground there and then tumble off the edge and die. We then have this little Jinjo cutscene come up. So the Jinjo statue is going to come out of the ground, and Asmi's going to want to poop eggs into it as the cutscene's going. This is a little bit like what we talked about with the Jiggy skips earlier. By pooping eggs here, you can overlap the 2 cutscenes that the Jinjos do, and then they both play sort of at the same time there, which saves you a whole bunch of time. There is a little risk with doing this called, like you can get a soft lock. And basically what happens if you get the skip, I think it's if you get it too late, then this statue just doesn't work at all to shoot eggs into. We have the Gingernator, and then there's some very clever dodging of all the fireballs while dealing with this. The fireballs home into you, which is why you've seen Asmi like run in circles occasionally to avoid them. They just like follow whatever linear path you're taking. And when you get the last egg in, that's timing ended for the run. A really, really impressive display, and really cool to see the sub-hour time in this category. Now, I'll move on to talking about 100% now. A lot of this will be repeat of any percent, so I won't talk about that stuff. But there's a lot of new stuff to talk about in 100% as well. Asmi used to have the record of 100% for a really long time, and now Thunderful got it about 9 days ago. So the difference with Spiral Mountain 100% is you need to get all 6 honeycombs. And the definition of 100% is sort of, you get all the honeycombs, G's, and notes, but you don't need to worry about mumbo tokens or stop and swap eggs or anything. There is another category called max percent where you do need to get all that extra stuff, but you can only do it once per cartridge because you need to get the stop and swap eggs, and you can only get them once per cartridge. 100% has that tricky jump at the start with the collie wobble, and there's a bit of RNG as to where it is. There's actually a lot of RNG in Spiral Mountain. It can depend how high the honeycomb bounces and stuff out of this as to how quick you go. Lots of little bits and pieces there. Now, this particular category of 100% we're looking at is the FFM category. So you'll see Banjo start with all the moves in Mumbo's Mountain here, except for eggs, flying, and gold feathers. But pretty recently, there's been a surge in no FFM 100% speedruns, and a lot more people have been running that category. It's a pretty fun category. There's some really cool routing stuff in it. But if I talk about every single category, this video will be like 10 hours long. So we'll stick to the FFM run for today. Thunderful goes into Ticker's Tower and does the skip, but it goes all the way up the tower this time compared to any percent. And we got sort of a cool strat with Conga here. So with the third shot onto Conga, you can actually do it from the tree stump over this area. So that saves yourself a little bit of time there. That strat I don't personally go for because it's not that consistent for me at least. But a lot of people like that strat and it's been around for years and years. And there's lots and lots of little subtle movement optimizations like this roll through the Mumbo token to get it. Just saves a bit of time over going under the bridge instead. Now, a lot of the any percent skips I talk about are used in 100% as well. For example, TTC early. They have the G's to open Treasure Trove Cove and they go right past the painting. But 100% runners have started doing this, which I think saves about 4 seconds or something. And it's quite a difficult trick. It's really cool to see in 100%, and it is consistent for me as well when I do it, so I do it in 100%. Definitely not something I'd recommend learning unless you've already run any percent before. There's plenty of other 4-second time saves you can get, which are much easier. This Blubber Jiggy skip here is a bit of luck. Depending on exactly where Blubber is, you may or may not get the Jiggy skip. And this flying section has really developed over the last couple of years. So it used to be that you didn't use Beak Bomb at all, but now Thunderful is Beak Bombing to the note with a damage recoil here, which is pretty hectic. And that note's quite difficult to grab without missing it. But not only are they Beak Bombing to the note, they're also Beak Bombing to the Jiggy in that chest. So it just saves that little bit of time over the flying section there, and that's sort of where 100%'s at these days. It's getting more and more optimized every time I look back on it. There's a lot of cool little flying Jiggy grabs in Treasure Trove Cove. For example, this one in the alcove here, you need to grab the Jiggy in flying and make sure you don't land. If you land, it is very bad for the routing of the level. But Thunderful grabs it and then heads up to the lighthouse there. This is a thing that can frustrate me a bit about running 100%, is that there's just, it's very long, and there's a lot of places where your run can just die. Like if you land on that Jiggy, it's bad and you might as well just reset. After Nipper, we do this little tree jump here. It looks quite easy, but it's actually fairly difficult to pull off there. But it makes it up to the X, which is a lot quicker than going around the other way with shock spring pad. We poop eggs into the leaky bucket from up here, and that saves a bit of time compared to actually going down with leaky and pooping eggs into him. And then we have another classic TTC flying section. So there's a lot to grab in this little bit here. You got to grab the Mumbo token and the 3 notes there. You've then got to beak bomb through the Jinjo. Now, whether or not you hit this Jinjo is actually quite inconsistent, but basically you beak bomb through it, it spawns a Jiggy, then you're trying to grab the honeycomb there with the little boop after the beak bomb. Then you can actually beak bomb up and get the Jiggy after the honeycomb as well. So you're getting so much in flying here, so you're basically getting several Jiggy skips for like one flight. So you get that one, and then you just fly back up and get the Jinjo Jiggy. This flight section used to really frustrate me because it was quite difficult. I don't get it every time now, but I'm finding it a lot easier than I used to. We spell Banjo-Kazooie and then take a death warp on this crab. With this crab, you just want to die with the Jiggy in your hand while hitting the crab there. That's, again, something that frustrates me about 100% is the crab's very inconsistent in how it moves, so you may or may not actually get that Jiggy skip. But there you go. So we're just going to get the lead Jiggy and move on to Clankers. Now 100% here has Phantom Bubble as well. You're wanting to grab that. It's actually a little bit tighter than any percent because you have to grab a Jinjo at the start of the level as well. But if you get that, you can make the optimal cycle. Where it really comes into play is whether or not you can shoot out Clanker's tooth in time. So if you get Phantom Bubble, you hit this cycle that Thunderful makes. If you don't get Phantom Bubble, you lose 10 seconds because that's how long it takes for his tooth to come back up again. We have the rings minigame as well, and runners love grinding down their rings time. Anything with a timer in this game, people tend to focus a lot on and just see how good they can get that particular timer. 23 is quite a good time for rings there. Next up we have this little section up the top of Clanker, and we do something called Bolt Jump. This jump is quite precise, so basically you got to jump off in Talon Trot. When Banjo is jumping, he goes into a falling animation like that, and as soon as he starts the falling animation you can flutter, whereas otherwise you could normally only just peck out of Talon Trot. But basically what you need to do is flutter onto the pole, and if you get it well enough then you can climb up the pole without needing to go there normally with the shock spring pad. We do this little strategy here to get the Jinjo, and then another strategy here to grab the honeycomb. Basically, by high jumping out of that, you can grab the honeycomb but make your way back up, which is quite fast to do. The high jump out of the honeycomb, you need like a little bear punch to time. There's also a little trick here where you can try and go for a Taz jump. So a Taz jump or like a mid-air jump, you have one frame to jump out of a Talon Trot in the air, and you can sort of get a jump in the mid-air and make your way across that gap without hitting the water. But at any rate, if you get Bolt Jump, you can usually hit this cycle that Thunderful makes here. It's like a 10-second cycle each time. And then you just make it into Clanker's Bolt as quick as possible. The level finishes up with snippets, and we have this strategy which again has been around for years. You poop eggs onto the snippets and try and make your way up to the Jiggy here. If you do that, you can sort of stand and overlap the Jiggy with the cutscene, which is pretty fast to do. Then the level ends with a really cool strategy in my opinion. So you want to get into the water as quick as possible, and basically that is where your timing of the level can stop essentially. So when you swim, you have like a little drowning animation, and it takes like 60 seconds for you to run out of air, and Thunderful's going to go and grab like all these items during the swim here. The last item you grab is that 10th Jiggy, skipping the Jiggy Jig, and then you drown pretty much right away after. So that death swim has been in Clankers for as long as I can remember in 100%, and it's a pretty cool strategy. Now, Thunderful's going to do something called the RBA route. Now, this is a route that I came up with like a couple years ago, and it's since been developed with a few more additions to it since then. But essentially, the gist of the route is you skip doing Bubble Gloop Swamp because it takes 70 seconds to open Bubble Gloop Swamp, and instead we clip in there with the B just like any percent. But the downside to it is you don't go near Bubble Gloop Swamp now, so we don't go near the Frazizi Peak puzzle. Essentially what that means is Thunderful's going to have to do Frazizi Peak early in this run with that Beak Bomb clip we saw before. So this can be a pretty tense part of the run, and I know when I was first learning any percent, FP early was really quite difficult, but once you get used to it, it has fairly good consistency for this trick. You do a little Beak Bomb up there, and if you're quick enough you can sort of get this other Beak Bomb into the door there rather than flying up to it. We have the little Twinklies minigame here, and you can sort of cheese this minigame by hitting the first enemy and then just standing here. Since the enemies aren't on camera, they won't spawn in. And I love this bit of the run because it's a convenient toilet break if you end up needing it for whatever reason. Although it used to be a lot later in the run, so it used to be a bit more useful for that reason. Now there's this trick called YOLO Star, and essentially what you do is you sort of land on the tree and you jump up through the star, flutter back and then ground pound 3. You need to go through the star 3 times, and that's a really fast way to go through the star 3 times. It is quite a tense trick to go for in the run. Coming up shortly after, we have the snowman section as well. There's some really good setups for beak bombing these snowmen, but you can sort of save or lose a whole bunch of time depending exactly how you do it. You have to hit them in very particular ways so that you recoil in exactly the direction you want to recoil. And like this one, for example, you would recoil left because that's the direction of the other snowman there. If you do it optimally, it looks something like this, and you can save or lose a whole bunch of time doing this. We have the buggy races. Now this used to be one of the most tense parts of the run for me, but I think with enough practice you tend to get used to it and become consistent at it. Basically you want to get the footnotes here with the walrus all around the feet, but if you're too slow, buggy will just basically give up on the race and say it's too easy and make you try again. So if you do those footnotes at all suboptimally, you're just going to lose a whole bunch of time through failing the race. Now, after getting the footnotes, there's even more stuff you grab as the walrus. So basically, with these houses, you'll never go on them outside of a buggy race. You're just going to get all this stuff while racing buggy, including these 2 water notes here. So it saves a little bit of time because this movement on the sled is a lot quicker than Walrus's normal movement. And when you do the Banjo side of this race, you would speed choose as Banjo, which again is quite a lot faster. So a lot of people will freak out when they see this race strategy and see Thunderful like slowing down to grab a whole bunch of objects, but buggy rubber bands. So it's actually almost safer to do the race like this because you're slowing down and not making sure buggy goes like really, really fast. The most tense part of the race I find are these 2 notes here. Like it looks like you shouldn't go out of the way to get these 2, but realistically you can catch buggy pretty much all the time when you get those notes. I'll also mention that with the walrus side of the race, the walrus will jump. When you jump up hills, the walrus gets a huge speed boost on the sled for some reason. So jumping up that hill, you pretty much always catch up to buggy. And we basically just come up and clean up the rest of the level with Banjo here. And we have to race buggy again with Banjo. So this is the reason why you need the running shoes for Frazizi Peak. And you're going to try and get the footnotes as Banjo. These footnotes are a little bit harder than the walrus ones as well, and you can very easily fail the race if you're too slow on them. And Banjo then just goes through and cleans up the rest of the level. Now, normally Woz's Cave is sort of a 2-trip adventure. So you need to come in here as Banjo to get the Jinjo up on this ledge here. And this is going to be the 10th Jiggy for the level here. One of the rare times we don't skip the 10th Jiggy Jig in a level is this Jinjo. But usually you need to come back into this room and get the honeycomb as the walrus, because there's this big underground segment you need to go through, or like underwater segment. But with this underwater bit here, if you jump really precisely at it with Banjo, you can actually get in there as Banjo. And the downside to this is you'd normally be trapped in here and unable to get out. But given this is the last thing we're going to get in this level, it's fine. We're just going to death warp out of here. And it's just a little honeycomb to get on this section. Now, a big part of the reason I wanted to come up with the RBA route when I did was Gobies opening. So you want to open Gobies on the way to Mad Monster Mansion and then do Gobies. But the old route used to be really silly because it would go into this room, open Gobies, come back out of this room, do Gobies, then open Mad Monster Mansion and go into this room again. There was just so much backtracking. But this route is just really clean with all the layer movement. And a big part of what they're doing in this route here is Mad Monster Mansion early, which we saw in the any % part. So this has a really big advantage in 100%. If you were going to open Mad Monster Mansion earlier, with normally, it would be slower to open it normally. And also on top of that, you would need to do 450 note door skip to get to the Mad Monster Mansion puzzle, since we only have 400 notes at this point. So Thunderful does that, goes into Mad Monster Mansion early with the big clips. Mad Monster Mansion can be scary in 100% if you forget to open those windows, because you need to open them for the pumpkin who needs to come in there later. And we have a cool little egg shot in this room here to just save a little bit of time getting that Jinjo later. This room really emphasizes some camera manipulation to avoid lag there. If you let the camera flick too far around on that window, it shows the entire level and gets very laggy. Also, after this ring, you'll see Thunderful doing a bit of camera manipulation to avoid lag again. So basically flicking the camera back around there so that the loading zone in here isn't very laggy. The game does speed up Banjo when it lags, like Banjo's actual movement, but any animations like jiggy jigs or going into loading zones are still slower. So it's usually worth avoiding lag if you can. We then have Napper Skip. So Thunderful's going to poop an egg like that, and then jump on the fly pad and sort of warp the door and the token and the extra life all onto the fly pad. It is a weird glitch, and that glitch can crash the game on Xbox. But basically, we get a jiggy skip by being in flying, and for some reason, when you do that and poop an egg, a whole bunch of objects warp to you. So by warping the Mumbo token, you get it. By warping the door, you don't need to break the door later, and it's just like really, really fast. We then have a trick called Beehive Jump. This can be really difficult to learn for new runners. I know I had a lot of trouble with it, but basically you just got to wait till it's at the top of its little cycle and it's fine. And then we have the Pots Jiggy. So Pots Jiggy can be a little bit brutal, as you're seeing here, I suppose. Getting the egg actually into the pot is quite tricky, and trying to get the egg in there before the tombstones come and catch you is also quite tricky. But there are setups for where you want to stand and where you want to poop the eggs from and everything. And usually it works. So for example, this last pot here, we're just going to poop the egg and then quickly run away. And you'll normally be able to outrun the tombstone before it hits you. We got Tumbler, and this is another one where runners really like to look at the time they get and just see. There's also a lot of damage boosting, so any of those red squares will hurt you, but it's often faster to go through the red squares than take a trip around them. The other thing that we'll see here with the next red square is Thunderful's going to go through it, not so much to take the damage, but more to avoid the ghost hitting Thunderful. Because if the red squares hit you, you stay on the Tumbler little cube thing, but if the ghost hits you, the ghost will knock you off Tumbler, so you'd rather take damage from the squares if you can. We have a Jinjo here, and we get like a little Jiggy Jig skip as well as a Mumbo token there. That Jiggy Jig skip has like an audio cue set up that you can use to jump off, and it saves you 4.5 seconds watching the Jiggy Jig. And we've also got Moat's Hand here, again, so you don't actually have to watch him play the organ, you can just do the pattern if you know what the pattern is. I know when I run it, I still have a little cheat sheet up in front of me saying what the pattern's supposed to be. We then finish up by doing the well as the pumpkin. It's actually funny, we used to do this well as Banjo. I think it was Connor75 just did it once as the pumpkin and then realized it was faster. And we'd been doing it for with Banjo for years at that point. So it's interesting the things that you find sometimes. Then we just go and raise the water level and we're ready to head into Gobi's Valley. Now 100% just resets the game out of this room. It's a bit faster than trying to walk out as a pumpkin if you're going to Gobi's Valley, but with any percent, since we're going further up the layer, it's faster to not reset. Gobi's Valley is a very intense level in 100%. So first of all, we've got to come in on full health. This probably gives you an indication of how intense it is. So we gold feather across the sand there, and then the whole start of the level is sort of on a little timer with the running shoes here. So we grab the Jinjo, we grab the running shoes, and then we're basically just waiting for the running shoes to run out at this point. So we're just going to grab the footnotes here and then make our way into the sand. But with the sand notes, it's very tricky to grab these without taking too much damage. So you can see Thunderful here getting a jump off that note number 12. That jump may or may not happen depending on exactly your timing there. So it can be pretty difficult to do. But then we go up towards Jinxie here and try for something which is called Gobi Clip. Sometimes people call it Jinxie Clip, it depends. But essentially, by jumping on there, you get like a little zip across the ground into Jinxie. And I have a whole video on that if you're interested in knowing why that happens. But it's a little mechanic in Banjo where if he falls into a ground far enough at a particular very specific height, you'll get a zip across the floor and that zips you into Jinxie here. There's some really cool egg shots here to just speed up the whole carpet process here, and then we'll grab the Jiggy. Coming straight out of Jinxie, we do like a camera manipulation thing here, pointing the camera back away from where Banjo's going, and the reason is because this ring is coming out of the ground here. So if that ring comes all the way out of the ground, you can get onto it, but it's slower and quite difficult to get onto the ring. But the rings only start coming up when they actually come on camera. So by pointing the camera away, you just wait. The ring only comes up when you're coming towards the ring and you can just jump up onto it. You're supposed to get the rings all in flying in this game. That's the intended way to do it. But pretty much what Thunderful's going to do is keep getting that one same ring over and over and over because it resets to that initial spot every time you go through a loading zone. And there's a little bit of luck as to which rings you get as your second ring, because sometimes you can get a really good ring where you go and get it and it's a little bit faster than the one got in this run. We also got the memory game, but thankfully it's all sort of like in the same spot every time you do it. It's pretty easy to remember because you're used to doing like the movement across to each square. We got to shoot eggs into these little things to open up the maze in this level, and you can do like a little jump off once you've shot the last egg and you won't take full damage down to that fly pad. Doing that jump is pretty risky because if you mess it up then it's really hard to get back on the platform and shoot eggs in again. Now after we're done with rubies, we got this really intense sequence of flying. So essentially what we do is we jump up here and then go and get the honeycomb in the cactus. We then need to break Gobi's boulder. Now with Gobi's boulder, pretty much the way that this works is you're supposed to like beak barge it or ground pound it, but you can break it in flying. And if you break it in flying here, essentially what happens is you can get the jiggy jig skip, but then you stay in flying. You can then go up to the water temple here. Now you're supposed to hit a switch to open the roof and get in, but if you do a really precise beak bomb through this section here, you can actually come in through the bottom entrance and save yourself a whole bunch of time. So that saves time over watching the cutscene of it opening up, but also time over coming in the roof to this room is a little bit slower than coming in through the front door there. Anyway, after that we have the maze. So with this maze here, you're supposed to, I guess, go through it normally, but you can pretty much just jump up on the wall and make your way across there fairly easily. If you have trouble doing it in Talon Trot, you can usually just roll and flutter out of it or whatever you need to do. The witch switch is in that maze, but we don't need to get the witch switch here. The witch switch doesn't actually spawn the jiggy, it just opens the door to the jiggy, and we can do a clip to get the jiggy later. There's this jump to the last ring. It's a very difficult jump, I really don't like doing it, but that spawns a ring jiggy up the top on Jinxie there, and now we can actually go and grab that now. Before doing this, we head down to see Gobi again. So you actually have to hit Gobi 3 times in this level. So this is the second time out of 3 here. We grab the running shoes, skip the jiggy jig, and beak bomb across to this little area here. So the thing that happens here is we want to basically go towards the grabber jiggy there. And with that grabber jiggy, we can get it just with the beak bomb there. It's a little bit faster than trying to do it with running shoes. Alright, so we make our way up to this section here, and then we need to get all the notes on the water pyramid that we missed getting before. Normally you grab these notes when you're going into the water pyramid after hitting the switch to open it, but it's a little bit faster to grab these now so we don't have to hit the switch or do any of that. Pretty much what Thunderful is doing is setting up for a death warp here now. So on a very particular amount of health in this sand here, making their way through. And then hoping to keep running shoes because this jump across here is possible without running shoes, but it's really, really frustrating, but also slow. Now, it's pretty tense with the honeycomb situation here. Basically, Thunderful is about to get the last honeycomb, which will restore Banjo's health. But just before that health restores, we take a death warp there to lose it all again. If you came into that section with 2 health, you actually would really mess up your death warp because you wouldn't be able to take 2 damage before your health completely restores, and then you'd have to take 8 whole damage in the sand there, which would be really slow. Next up we get Rusty Bucket Bay, and one of the first real big bits of the level is Engine Room here. So Engine Room is very cycle based. You can see here there's not really much Thunderful could do apart from wait for that cog to come down from the Mumbo token, and you can usually tell how well you've done Engine Room based on where these turning cogs are when you get up to them here. So this cog's usually turning at about this point when you get up to this, and then you can start hitting the switches to set off that cutscene. So this bit coming up is the really scary bit of Engine Room. It's jumping through these blades without slowing them down. So you basically want to take 1 damage and then jump up through, and you quite often take a second damage. It's like 50-50 whether you do or not. With that second damage, it's really important that you take that perpendicular to the fans, because if you take it at any angle other than that, Banjo's pretty much going to fall off the whole thing, and then you're going to die, which is very bad. We hit that second switch to slow down the spinning blades here, and then Thunderful's going to do the window clip that I showed before to get out of this room. The window clip can be a little bit finicky, but usually get through about that quickly there. Now we make our way out of the room. You can see here getting the fan jiggy there. If you did take 20 seconds on window clip for whatever reason, that would be very bad because then the fans would start up again. But if you do that, you just get it in a slightly different order. It's a bit slower, but it should be okay. We have this little boss boombox section, and there's a few different ways to do this room. You're supposed to fight him, but you can actually hit him with eggs and then the jiggy just appears there. The jiggy spawns inside him, but you can totally grab the jiggy without initiating the fight. It's really interesting how it works. But Thunderful gets a Jiggy Jig skip by taking damage on the same frame. It's pretty much a frame perfect trick, so it's a difficult one to go for. We go through a lot of tense movement. For example, in this box here, you can jump past the chompers without being hit, although sometimes you do get hit, and it's pretty bad when that happens. We then have these little slope skips. So this is to do with the slope timer, much how like a termite skip worked in Mumbo's Mountain. But pretty much you can jump back out over the water to reset your slope timer and then just sort of jump on those slopes and make your way up. It's a really good skip for Rusty Bucket Bay because it saves you paying all those toll gates with the eggs, and it makes sure you can come in from any direction you need to. We then have this section, which always frustrates me in runs. This is lifeboat jump. So pretty much what you do is you hit this area to pull the crane up, and then you can. The intended method is to climb up the crane and jump down to the jiggy. But if you're precise enough, you can do this jump here onto the lifeboat, and if you fall, you lose like 20-25 seconds. And if you get it, you save like about 3 seconds. It's a interesting strat. But you make it into this pipe before the cutscene starts as well, which is good. And you can still make it in before the cutscene without lifeboat jump as well though. We have this little section here, the 3-1-2-1-1-1 section, and there's some camera movement to avoid lag. Basically pointing at this side of the level is a lot less laggy than any other way. Now this next room, nav room, is not particularly interesting, except there's a really weird crash that can happen here. If both these sea enemy people hit you at the exact same frame, it can crash the game, so you just got to be pretty careful of that whenever you're dealing with this room. I've never had it happen, but a few runners have it happen like all the time. Potentially due to the way they're moving through the room, they're more likely to get hit maybe at the same time, but I don't know the exact reason. Anyway, we free Snorkel and have this very tense movement through this room. Thunderful's on 2 health, so if he got hit by any of those chompers, he would be dead. And it can happen. So yeah, pretty tense this section of the game. We grab Snorkel as Jiggy and then we need to go up. So not only is Thunderful in the oily water, which takes double the air, we also have Snacker show up in this section. So this is a pretty scary little bit of the game here. But Snacker's not too dangerous, you can usually avoid him, and then we want to get the Jinjo Jiggy. With this Jinjo Jiggy, we're doing the little strategy where you jump out of the water in order to sort of trick the game, make it think you're in the water, and you usually get that Jiggy skip there. Then we make our way into the Honeycomb room and finish up the level. With this Honeycomb here, you basically just want to ground pound after getting it, and that causes Banjo to take some damage and a death warp. Now, Thunderful goes for Click Clock Wood early in this run. MMM early is absolutely definitely worth it. Click Clock Wood early does save quite a bit of time, but it can be pretty finicky. So if you had to pick one of the two, I'd pick MMM, but you know, you might as well go for both if you're going to be doing bit clips. This Click Clock Wood early saves a bit of time on this split, but it also saves time earlier on in the layer because you didn't need to grab the red cauldron before if you're doing Click Clock Wood early. Thunderful makes his way up to the top of the tree and then back down to this section. We've got a cool little bit here where you hit the beehive and then shoot eggs into the little plant bit there. Essentially what happens with that is the bees are going to hit you during the cutscene and it allows Banjo to move during the cutscene. So that's just a general thing with cutscenes in this game. If you get hit during the cutscene, you'll gain your movement back, and that just allows them to do some of that movement there while watching the cutscene. Saves a little bit of time. Summer here has the Zubbers Jiggy in the beehive, and this one can be pretty brutal if you forgot to make sure you have gold feathers before coming into Click Clock Wood, because killing these without gold feathers is pretty tricky. We then climb up the other way in Summer to get this Jiggy here, and this bird strat is kind of difficult. Basically what you got to do is get that shock spring pad without hitting the bird. Whenever you kill a bird, it will play a cutscene of the bird dying. That's only the first time you ever kill one. So what Thunderful is trying to do is make it through the whole level without having ever killed any of those birds, and that way he'll never get the cutscene. We feed Eerie here. Eerie needs 5 worms in summer and 10 worms in autumn, but Thunderful actually grabs another worm on the way out of summer. So you don't need to get the 10 autumn worms in autumn. What we're going to do is get one of those worms in summer here and then the other 9 in autumn. Kind of a cool little routing thing there. And then here we have probably the most hidden Jinjo in the game, just in that grass there. Very easy to miss. We got Autumn here, which can be pretty cheeky, needing gold feathers on these things here. The level is fairly gold feather heavy, this one, and so is the next level, so you got to be careful on your counts there. Wonderful's heading into Naughty's house here. You need to go into Naughty's house in autumn and winter, and you need to break the boulder to Naughty's house in summer, so there's lots to do with this area of the game. Now basically we got to go through the bad hit detection acorns and then feed Eerie. One thing you might notice Thunderful not doing is feeding the plant in autumn, and there's a very good reason for that, which we'll see later. It's like a very minor optimization when you feed Eerie, but it can save a lot of time. You basically just got to make sure your camera is not pointed anywhere that's going to cause lag when you're feeding Eerie, because that will cause you some pretty major issues if you got it pointed that way. Thunderful's coming into Mumbo's skull in autumn. There's actually not a whole lot in here apart from 4 notes up the top. These 4 notes are very easy to miss if you're trying to 100% the game, because you might just remember Mumbo basically does nothing in the other seasons. Then coming out of Mumbo's skull, we actually have another bit clip. This is one of the first bit clips I managed to find when I was first looking at them, basically because Banjo is already pointed along an axis. So you don't need any fancy setups or twirly-whirlies, you basically just go along the axis of the level and you hit the bit clip spots anyway. So it works out really, really well. Then we head into Winter, and Winter's a lot quicker because it's got the fly pads. There's a few bits and pieces in Winter, but this bit here is probably the main section here. You feed Eerie while in flight. Well, not feed, but Eerie gives you the jiggy while you're in flight, and you basically grab the jiggy here and then you just go up and grab the one up the top. This section's pretty tight because you want to make sure you got this jiggy in flying, and then you got to break the window awkwardly down the bottom there. It can be pretty tricky to do, especially getting that flutter back in. But the hard bit of Winter is actually getting back into Naughty's house. And I said before that we could do the icy water swim, but we actually do a flying clip into Naughty's house, which is pretty cool. So with this clip here, what you want to do is you want to sort of beak bomb left there and get into Naughty's house. You then want to grab the jiggy and the honeycomb in flying, which can be pretty tricky. And then you want to do a beak bomb clip out through this corner. So that little section there is very tricky to pull off, but it saves a lot of time doing it like that. Banjo then falls out rather than you having to swim out of the icy water. There is a little backup strategy sort of thing where you could get the jiggy in autumn, but regardless, you'd still need to come into that house in winter to get the honeycomb no matter what. Now, I mentioned before that Thunderful did not feed the plant in autumn, and this is sort of why here. Thunderful's going to go for something called soft lock strat on this plant. So there's sort of a glitch where you can poop eggs into the plant here, and you're not supposed to be able to poop eggs in again, but it will grow the plant and it will spawn the jiggy. This cutscene normally freezes Banjo up completely and softlocks the game. Like, you can't get out of this cutscene. But if you get hit by the bees, you can move during the cutscene. And if you can move during the cutscene, you can navigate your way over to Mumbo's skull without seeing it. It's pretty tricky to do. You can use sound cues as like whether Banjo's on the grass or whether he's not on the grass to help you know where you are. But if you pull it off correctly, then you should be in Mumbo's skull at this point here. And then Click Clock Wood is pretty much done at this point. The bee needs to go into the beehive here, but the quickest way to get out of the level from this point is pretty much just by flying out there and making your way out of the level. Now we have what, in my opinion, is one of the coolest sections in the run, mainly because it kind of resembles any percent, really. It's the bee lair section. So basically, what we've done is we've spawned a whole bunch of the lair witch switch jiggies, but we haven't got any of them as Banjo, because getting them as Banjo is slow. We're now going to sweep back down the lair and get a whole bunch of jiggies really, really quickly. So we've got the jiggy sort of here, which is the Rusty Bucket Bay jiggy. Could have got that as Banjo, but why not skip the jiggy jig with the bee? And then we're going to fly out into the Frazizi Peak lobby. Now, we never actually hit the Frazizi Peak witch switch at all, but you are still able to get the jiggy. You can actually get it as Banjo as well. Pretty much the door blocking the Frazizi Peak jiggy is very thin, so all you've got to do here with the bee is you got to fly up towards this door on the advent calendar, just touch the edge of it, and your nose just grabs the jiggy immediately. With Banjo, you can pretty much do the exact same thing to get the jiggy. The only difference is you need to do a beak bomb with Banjo to hit that right height. We did have to spawn the Mad Monster Mansion jiggy in this eye, but pretty much you can just grab it with the nose in a very similar way here. Now, the Gobi's Valley jiggy we never hit the witch switch for, but what you can do is pretty much just jump up onto this thing here and grab that jiggy there with the bee. You then want to get into the vase here, which is easier said than done sometimes. Similarly with the Bubble Gloop Swamp jiggy, we never hit that witch switch. In fact, we've never been in Bubble Gloop Swamp yet, but the bee can just literally walk through the bars. Like, the bee is skinny enough to do that. So that's just like, I think it's like 6 Gs in very, very quick succession. So it's a fast section of the game, and this is part of the reason why the RBA route saves a whole bunch of time. Also with the RBA route, you clip into Bubble Gloop Swamp, and that saves a 70-second process of Banjo opening it. So this is why it's much faster doing this than doing the levels in sort of the intended order for 100%. But we don't need the bee and bubble gloop swamp at all. So pretty much all we're going to do here now is we're going to take a death warp with the bee in Mumbo's skull here. So we'll de-transform back into Banjo and then just die. So the 70 seconds that you save by not opening bubble gloop swamp, you probably lose about 30-40 seconds of that by doing this de-transform. But overall it does end up being worth it, especially if you consider that like you're grabbing those lair jiggies really quickly as the bee. Also the bee grabbed the honeycomb up the top of Mumbo's. This is the kind of frustrating thing about this route for me. When I was originally routing the RBA route for 100%, I really wanted to put more stuff with the bee in Bubble Gloop Swamp while we still had the bee, but it just wasn't worth it in the end, because you either had to not take the Death Warp so you could keep the notes, or you had to get stuff that would persist, like the Honeycomb or Jiggies or anything like that. Thunderfall's hit the first Croctus here in Bubble Gloop Swamp, and now he's on a pretty tight cycle to get the second one. So the second Croctus is pretty much just here, and you're wanting to hit it before its mouth closes there. We got the Flibbit section, which gold feathers are pretty good, but we're not actually going to grab the Jiggy yet. As I said before, transformations do skip Jiggy jigs, so with the transformation we're going to come back and grab that Jiggy with the Croc. We then have the hut jumps here, which can be pretty hectic. You want to get as high as possible on the hut and jump across, but if you screw it up you fall all the way down. So hut jumps can be a very high risk, high reward sort of situation. You can get a hut jump off this hut, but Thunderfall is opting to ground pound it, as with pretty much every runner does opt to ground pound it, because that hut jump there is very difficult to get, and more likely you're going to fall off rather than actually get the hut jump here. And we're basically just following the Croctus around the level, and I really like this level because the route is very well defined. Like, you just follow the Croctus and then you'll know what to do. Alright, next up we have Tank Top, and it has a really interesting strat. You get control here, and then again here, by bouncing off Tip Top twice, and that lets you move during the cutscene. So while you're watching the turtles do their little song, you can actually ground pound them throughout that. It's really cool. The other two rounds don't have that same strat for skipping and getting movement. So basically what you need to do is just watch it and hope that you get a good pattern. If you get a bad pattern, you lose a bunch of time. Like this pattern here is sort of like a medium one, but the yellow and the pink one were pretty far apart, so you wouldn't want that. Bubble Gloop pretty much ends on a 3-minute auto-scroller, which is Mr. Vile, and I was so happy when the RBA route was happening that we could put this towards the end of the run, because otherwise 40 minutes into the run you got to sit through a 3-minute auto-scroller, and it's really frustrating. Now you are still a very slight amount of risk of losing to Vile, which can be a bit scary right at the end of the run, but I think I'd rather have this at the end of the run rather than having to do it every single time you do a run. For the rest of it, 100% pretty much plays out like the rest of any percent did. Pretty much the main difference is the 100% runners do have 25 Jiggies, so they just open Door of Grunty normally rather than doing Door of Grunty skip. Now it would be faster to do Door of Grunty skip here in 100%, and you'd probably save a few seconds, maybe like 5 or 6 if you could get it optimally, but I think runners just have decided it's not really worth going for, considering it's a frame perfect trick, and if you fail it you could fall out of bounds and lose a whole bunch of time. I like going for Door of Grunty skip in 100%, but that's more for fun rather than anything. And I've done a lot of Door of Grunty skip in any percent, so I'm pretty used to that trick by now. But I do lose time quite often trying to go for that trick anyway, so it's a bit of a double-edged sword there. Now I want to move on to talking about the other categories here. So 100% no FFM is pretty interesting. It's got the boggy race done as a bee, which is really fascinating because you don't have running shoes for the original boggy race. And any percent restricted is sort of like the old no RBA category. It's also got no bit clips in it, so it can be a nice one to learn if you're looking at picking up this game for the first time. But I really want to talk about the Xbox runs. So there's a whole bunch of Xbox runs here. 100% is very interesting because it's routed around being able to keep notes in levels, and quite often they'll do like 2 trips into a level, one with Banjo, one with the bee, which just isn't possible on N64 since you lose your notes. Would definitely recommend watching this one and checking out some of the cool routes, and it's actually pretty close to the N64 time there, especially now that we can do bit clips on Xbox, which is only a very recent development. The one that I really want to talk about is Xbox Any%, which has had a very, very fascinating history. Alright, so we're looking at the world record by Trep. Now this is a lot faster than Any% on N64, and it has a bit of a different setup to it. So N64 Any% uses a glitch called Furnace Fun Moves, which requires a file that's already set up. Xbox Any% can be done from a completely clean save file, so you don't need any prior data in the game to do this. It's a really, really cool category, and you can see that Trep is basically just waiting on the title sequence, which should ring alarm bells for you. Essentially, Trap is setting up a glitch called Demo Desync Adventure. So while waiting on the end of the title sequence during the fade out, for some reason if you press start multiple times you can cycle through the demos so that it doesn't play Mumbo's Mountain first. I don't know why they left this in. So that's one half of the glitch. The other half is on Xbox because they changed the way the camera controls work. If you hold a particular direction on the control stick, you can flick the camera around and cause Banjo to die in the demo. Now what this achieves is it respawns Banjo into Rusty Bucket Bay and you can pretty much just play the game from there. So you already have all the moves, you have 25 Mumbo's tokens, you have a whole bunch of feathers, just like a whole bunch of stuff you have. So it's going to be really fast to play through the game like this. Not to mention, since you're starting in Rusty Bucket Bay, you don't need to worry about getting the pumpkin to raise the water level, so we get water level skip. Now you do have some downsides to playing on Xbox, like we don't have text skip, we don't have Door of Grunty skip, so we still need 25 Gs to get through that, but it is less laggy, so there's trade-offs like everywhere in both directions here. But basically, Trep is starting in Rusty Bucket Bay, and you can see Trep's not really worrying about getting heaps and heaps of notes, and we'll see why later. Now, Trap is more focused on Gs at the moment than notes, which is pretty unusual for an any % category in this game since you need 810 notes to beat it. We're getting quite a few Gs here in Rusty Bucket Bay. Now Trap's going to hit the water level switch here, and that saves doing anything with the pumpkin here. Now from this point, Xbox any % used to play out a little bit like N64 any %. From this point you would try and get to Click Lock Wood, and you would try and get the B and take that everywhere to pretty much destroy the game. But recently we found a glitch called Pause Overlap Glitch. Now Pause Overlap Glitch was originally found by TSR Storm and Trep, and since it was found I did some development in figuring out how we could use it to clone notes, which is why he's pretty much not grabbing any notes in Rusty Bucket Bay. Weirdly enough, this glitch is related to the Game Over cutscene that you get, so you actually have to go all the way back down to the start of the layer and watch this cutscene. That changes the style of Game Over you get when you pause exit. Then we gotta head back up to Frazizi Peak. And just coming into Frazizi Peak here is where we're going to really see the Pause Overlap Glitch come into action. There are many ways you can get Pause Overlap Glitch. One way is off a cauldron cutscene. So by doing this and landing in the cauldron, and then opening the Xbox menu and closing it on a very particular frame, you can open the pause menu, but still keep playing as Banjo, which puts the game in a very odd strait. And this persists through loading zones as well, so you can basically keep this menu open for ages, and then make your way into Frazizi Peak. Now from this point on, Trep does the same FP early that we see on Nintendo 64. It is a little bit trickier on Xbox to do this trick, and it's also a bit trickier if you've got a pause menu in front of your face while you're trying to do it. But he pulls it off brilliantly and makes his way into FP here. You then have to do pretty much all of FB with a big pause menu in front of your face, but if you get into this like leaderboard menu here, you can pretty much see what's going on. One thing that I struggle with a lot on Xbox is it is quite dark on a CRT, so you just got to get used to that trying to see what you're doing. Anyway, Trap gets all 100 notes in Frazizi Peak and makes his way to the Witch Switch. Very unusual to see pressing this Witch Switch in a run, but he hits Exit Game right at the end of the cutscene. This starts the Game Over little fade out thing, and Banjo can move during that. So what happens? You hit the cauldron, start a cutscene, and then it reloads the room, but you can't see anything that you're doing. So kind of like Softlock Straight, you have to walk into the door on the left side of the room without seeing where you're going. But if Trap makes it into the door here, he makes it out of Frazizi Peak. Now you might be wondering, what did that actually achieve? We basically just left Frazizi Peak without going out the door. Well, the way notes work in this game is when your note score is saved actually happens when you hit the pad to exit the level. If you can exit the level without going through that pad, for example, by watching a Witch Switch cutscene, well, it still thinks that Trep is kind of in Frazizi Peak and has 100 notes. If you have 100 notes, well, what happens if we get another note? We're going to get 101 notes. So now basically the way the note totals are working is he's got 100 notes from FP, they're still locked in, and as soon as he touched that first note in this level, it gave him 101 notes for TTC, and now he's got 108. So between these two levels, he's now got 208 notes, even though he only collected 108 notes. Now we saw Pause Overlap Glitch happen before on a Cauldron cutscene, but you can actually also get it on the Leaky cutscene. So if you unpause here, and this one's pretty easy to do, you can get the pause menu up in the sandcastle, and we got pause overlap glitch again. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to steal these 187 notes out of TTC. So pretty much he goes in, hits the witch switch, and does a game over again. That gives him movement during the game over cutscene, and you might be able to see Banjo just barely walk out the door. Probably can't see it with that cutscene in the way, but anyway, he gets out the door. And now you've escaped TTC while holding like 190 notes. So we've got the 100 notes from FP, they're locked in. We've got 190 notes from TTC, they're locked in. And now the game still thinks we're in TTC. So what can we do? We can enter another level, and then we're going to clone those 190 notes again. I will really stress, this is an incredibly difficult category. So first of all, getting the pause overlap glitch on a cauldron like what Trep did it's basically frame perfect, and it's very hard to time because there's like no visual cues. Also, these escapes out of the levels that he's doing, it's fairly frame perfect when you hit game over. You might have a little bit of a window of hitting game over, and then the actual movement and angles you hold on the stick are very precise as well. So he's going to go for the pause overlap glitch again on this cutscene, and this is like a frame perfect thing to get this one as well. And unfortunately he missed it on this. So there is still a little bit of room and time to save on this world record. Nobody's actually been able to get this with the pause overlap glitch in the cauldron and that cutscene. Now, the reason he wants pause overlap glitch is to pull the notes out of clankers, but he can still clone notes in clankers here. So you'll see when he touches it, it's going to be like 193 there. So that's the 190 notes from TTC, they're still locked in. And now he essentially, by collecting that one note, collected 193 notes in Clanker's Cavern. What that does is it sort of saves your best note score for Clanker's Cavern. And now what he can do is he can just head back into Treasure Trove Cove to get pause overlap glitch again. So had he got this on the Clanker's Cavern puzzle, he wouldn't have to do any of this stuff going back into TTC, but unfortunately getting that in a run is still pretty inconsistent. So I'd love to see the world record here improve by getting that on the puzzle, but it's pretty hard to do. Anyway, he'll get the pause overlap glitch again and just bring that through into Clanker's Cavern now. He's then going to go through and get a whole bunch of notes in Clanker's Cavern. You just got to be really, really careful. If you go over 255, your notes loop around and you actually go back to 0. So you can't just clone a whole bunch of notes using this method. You're pretty much capped at that level there. But at any rate, he's going to go and get a few notes here and then go into Clankers. This is where the witch switch is. You might be noticing a theme here. We use the witch switches to escape. Gets the notes in this little room here. And he's going to line up the game over on this witch switch, and you can see Banjo there start running off while the game over cutscene goes, and he gets out the door going in towards Mumbo's Mountain. So yeah, it's absolutely amazing, this glitch. He's still holding the 220 notes or whatever from Clanker's Cavern. We're going to pull them into Mumbo's Mountain here. And what we'll see in Mumbo's Mountain is that when we touch the first note, that note's going to be up in the 200s already. There we go, 230 there. And he doesn't want to grab many notes here. As soon as you touch that first note, you have cloned them into Mumbo's Mountain. But due to the fact that we don't have Door of Grunty skip on Xbox, you still do need quite a few Gs in this category. So if we could find that skip, it would save a whole bunch of time in 90%. One little thing that I'll point out, if you're familiar with Banjo, you'll notice there's no little puzzle piece animation coming into the level. It's just like a straight loading zone there, and that's a side effect of the glitch. So we went into Rusty Bucket Bay for ZZ Peak, TTC, Clankers and Mumbos, but we already have 816 notes, which is absolutely wild that we have that much. So really cool to see, and it's an interesting route. So Trep actually only went into, I guess, 5 out of the 9 levels and managed to get over 800 notes, which is just the power of this cloning glitch. I'll point out that there's another cloning glitch that has also been found, and it's to do with the Furnace Fun minigames. So it looks like Xbox has a lot of potential to be broken with this kind of stuff. And it's clear there's definitely still some time to come down on this record, mainly from just getting that pause overlap glitch on the Clankers puzzle, so it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Alrighty, now we're going to talk about the Taz of this game. So there was a Taz back in the day, 2009 by Sammy in 224. I love the 640 by 480 high quality encode on this TAS. But since then, that TAS was improved by Hyper Resonance, who got a sub 2 back in 2016. Now, Hyper's TAS does have a bit of room for improvement now that we found new glitches and stuff. I mean, at the time, it was quite optimal. But I feel really terrible because a couple days after this TAS came out, we found a new Furnace Fun skip. So this little Furnace Fun skip, I found the seed of this, which was getting up onto this bit and skipping quite a few of the tiles. And then between Hyper and Cole, we figured out how to skip all the tiles on Furnace Fun. So this is pretty much what it looks like with that Furnace Fun skip there. So yeah, unfortunately this one came out about a week after the 100% TAS was published and then wasn't included in that. The other thing from this TAS that is missing is like bit clips and a few other strats. This TAS doesn't use FFM, so it has to do it from like a clean cartridge, which means that it also has to watch the intro cutscene, because if you've never played the game before, you can't skip the intro cutscene. So I won't talk about the entire TAS, but I do want to jump into bits and pieces of this TAS and talk about some cool bits. So yeah, we'll see the TAS leads off here by watching the opening cutscene, and for that reason, you'll see that it is like 3 minutes slower than RTA, but it's actually quite a lot faster than RTA if you take into account like loading zones and cutscenes and stuff from emulator. Although if 100% TAS was made again today, it could save quite a bit of time still with all the new tech we found since 2016. Now, one really cool segment of the TAS here is getting the eggs into Juju. Rather than actually going onto the platform, Hyper is shooting eggs from these huts, and it's really fast to do that. We also see a really cool jiggy skip here. This is like a damage cancel jiggy skip on that one there. Now, climbing poles in the TAS is actually a bit faster because you can do this ground pound strategy. Hyper's made it pretty clear that it's probably not worth trying that RTA, because you have to be very precise to actually save time with it. And you might notice as well TTC running a little bit slower because we don't have Beak Bomb from FFM, but there's still some really cool strats here without Beak Bomb being used. Now the TAS is full of something called TAS jumps, or like frame perfect jumps. You'll see one here off this bit. You can jump out of midair in Talon Trot if you hit the jump button frame perfectly, right as Banjo finishes the sliding animation, and that's going to save time all over the TAS. A lot of these Gs we just have to watch in RTA. The TAS can get these damage frame perfect skips, which saves a whole bunch of time too. Now I talked before about how Phantom Bubble is pretty hard to get RTA. The TAS gets a bubble which is one bubble faster than Phantom Bubble, and you'll see how it does it in a sec here. So it does the start of Clankers very differently to how we'd normally do it. Normally you'd have to go back to that starting area, but with one of those TAS jumps you can actually make it across this gap to that note there. Saves a whole bunch of time in moving around Clankers. And as a result we get this one. It's one faster than the Phantom Bubble, and I believe it saves a 10-second cycle coming into Clanker's Tooth. It's important to note that the TAS was made before the RBA route was really a thing, so it still goes through and opens Bubble Gloop all normally, although it might not have done the RBA route given that it would have had to do FP early, which you can't do without FFM. That being said, we do now have a bit clip into Bubble Gloop Swamp, and bit clips weren't known at the time of this TAS, so it could have used that instead of opening the puzzle if you wanted to go to Bubble Gloop Swamp next. The TAS does this really cool skip here. It's called Neck Clip. It's actually pretty easy to do on PAL, but on NTSC it's very difficult. You can jump through Grunty's neck there and just grab the jiggy here without hitting the Bubble Gloop Swamp Witch Switch. I really like Neck Clip for some reason, I don't know why. I mentioned that the TAS actually does have to go and learn all the moves, so it probably looks a bit weird seeing all these bottles trips throughout the run. And the TAS does hut jumps very quickly, including this hut that's usually too difficult to do a hut jump off of. Very impressive stuff here. Now, turtles look pretty much like RTA, except for this last little bit here, where the TAS is able to get a jiggy skip by jumping just barely up to the jiggy range as the cutscene's going. Saves that little bit of time. Now, the TAS does go and do Gobi's Valley next, and you might be a bit confused because you need Beak Bomb to 100% Gobi's Valley. How is the TAS actually going to do this? And it has a little trick up its sleeve. So you can actually get out of bounds in this level as Banjo without Beak Bomb. What you need to do is start the water pyramid timer, and then let the door just gradually push you out of bounds as it's closing. So the whole reason you need Beak Bomb in this level is to get into Ruby's Pyramid, which is just over here. And the TAS can get in this pyramid now without Beak Bomb. So it means that we don't have to do that awkward level backtrack going into FP Gobi's FP. I'll mention that this trick can also be used to get the stop and swap egg without cheats, which is pretty cool. Since we didn't see it in the RTA section, I'll point out here that you can actually get this jiggy here just by rolling into the face. They didn't really program that good collision on it. And the Taz goes to Mad Monster Mansion. I'll mention with some pretty scary Taz jumps across this room to cut corners a bit tighter. And there are so many cool little skips, like this little bit here where the Taz doesn't want to high jump up to the notes. Why not just jump on the top of this barrel and then Taz jump up to the notes? So wild. There's also this really cool jump up to the top of Tumbler. It saves you sort of going around to the shock spring pad. You just make the high jump up there in the Taz. I've tried to do that like for really long RTA even once and haven't been able to get it. It's pretty precise. The Taz still does Banjo well, which is probably a sign of the times because we now do Pumpkin well. But I'm not entirely sure what the timing comparison's like in a Taz setting. There's actually a really cool strat here. The Taz wants a health restore, so why not just die on the Witch Switch, which causes Banjo to restore health, but doesn't cause you to lose any of the progress through the level because it doesn't count as a death technically. Cool stuff. Now FP is pretty much the same until we get to a buttons jiggy here. So Hyper actually spent about 2 years working on this Taz before it was done. And he was saying that this section in particular took almost like several weeks or months at a time to actually do. It's this big bomb there going through the 2 buttons and then hitting the snowman. It is incredibly precise, but it saves so much time doing it like that. Really cool to see. Because apparently the flying sections here were the hardest ones to optimize when making the Taz, which kind of checks out because you got so many degrees of freedom in flying. One thing you might also notice is that the feather counts are getting quite low. Hyper was determined not to get the egg note door at the end of the game, so all the feathers and eggs are managed like really carefully to make sure he gets exactly what he needs and no unnecessary extras. Now the route for Rusty Bucket Bay is absolutely wild. It's one of my favorite parts of the Taz. So normally you just do engine room, and you would slow down the fan blades. Why not clip through the boat so that you never have to stop the fan blades? Now, if you just touch the fan blades, Banjo does immediately die. And if you try and do this, what he's about to do here, you're going to get stuck inside. Unless you can press C up right as you grab the jiggy to turn around. That's a frame perfect trick. And then just turn around and go straight into the boombox loading zone to also avoid you dropping the crane, which has the TNT. This is such a cool route through RVB. I absolutely love it. And of course, getting the jiggy jig skip. Just like what RTA does when it's lucky, but the Taz can of course do it perfectly. Moving on from this, we have Engine Room, which again is one of my absolute favorite parts of the Taz, and you'll see why in just a second. So here, not even really saving time there because of the cycle, except now heaps of time is saved. So it's the Taz jump across there, it's the Taz jump between the fan blades, and that is just absolutely wild movement for Engine Room. And I'll also point out that Hyper doesn't need to hit the fan switches anymore because he's already got the fan jiggy with that hectic C up turnaround thing. And also, why not just jump through the fan blades without taking any damage at all because you're a Taz and you have the precision to do it. Seriously, one of the coolest rooms in the Taz, and just like jump straight through window clip as well. Now everything so far that I've mentioned would be like, I guess somewhat possible RTA, but this bit here, that jump is pretty difficult to do. That plus the turnaround on the fan blades would make this route not particularly RTA viable. I don't know, maybe in like an IL setting I could see somebody doing it, but this route's pretty hectic. Really cool stuff though. The rest of RBB is fairly normal except for this bit here, which has one of the wildest damage skip jiggies I've seen. Getting damage on the jumper with the jiggy of all things. And Click Lock Wood has a few really cool bits as well. In particular, the start bit here, where Hyper lures the fly to take damage during this cutscene, allowing him to just walk up to spring while the cutscene's going on. Just those little bits and pieces save so much time in this house. The other thing that saves time is doing Zubbers without gold feathers. It's actually the same speed as doing it with gold feathers, but it saves you having to pick up a whole bunch of gold feathers. Why not do it? Now, a lot of this stuff is the same as RTA now, just with the added little scariness of just doing very tight jumps around the tree, which would normally cause you to die if you tried them RTA. Now, there's this very subtle but cool strat in Autumn when you're feeding Eerie. So watch carefully Eerie's head when it comes down onto Banjo here. And there he goes, straight through the nest down to Mumbo's skull. It's just a very minor thing, but it saves a lot of time over just jumping down to Mumbo's skull normally. Now, Hyper's in an interesting situation here. He wants to get out of Autumn very quickly. Now, normally we do a bit clip in the RTA run here, but bit clips weren't found yet at the time of making this Taz. So Hyper has like quite a cool solution to this problem here. He does this little slope clip here on the brambles. That slope clip is pretty hard RTA, so it's not worth doing. And now that we've got the bit clip, we wouldn't really need to do it, but it's a cool little strategy there. Now, the winter route is very different, but it includes this awesome beak bomb across the notes here. That is seriously one of my favorite parts of the Taz there. And we still have the beak bomb there into Naughties here. And it's a similar ending to what we see in the RTA speedrun. Hyper clips out in a slightly different spot, but it achieves the same effect there. Note when you ground pound on a void out, it actually restores your health there. It's something to keep in mind for routing purposes. Hyper does go for soft lock strat, which plays out pretty much the same as RTA, I guess with the main difference in that Hyper actually knows very clearly what they're doing in a Taz setting because you can look at Banjo's coordinates and stuff. But we get into Mumbos and escape the cutscene. So we get into Furnace Fun, and as I said, the faster Furnace Fun skip was found after this Taz, but we can do a little tile skip there. So you see like jumping underneath the tile. That's the same sort of like seam that's used in Ninpok skip. It's very thin, it's like a pixel thin, and by ground pounding up through that seam you get through. But you can only ground pound if you're under the seam, so that's what makes it difficult. Now, at the time of making this Taz, Ninpok skip wasn't actually known, so it uses sort of a older skip here instead. So this skip, I believe, was found by Obliterator, but by going on this little corner of the square here, and you get knocked off, you don't get knocked off into the lava, you just get knocked off there. So no need to do the talon trotting or anything, you basically just do that. So Furnace Fun is definitely a spot where the Taz could save a bit of time, as well as using FFM and a few more modern things like bit clips everywhere and stuff like that. But the cool thing is, the Taz does go for Door of Grunty skip. You can get it a lot quicker than opening Door of Grunty normally, and there it is. The first part of the Grunty fight is pretty standard until we get to the beak bomb section. So we see sort of two normal beak bombs, but then the last two hits we get are a little bit different. They're actually going to be ground pounds on Grunty, and that does save you a little bit of time over doing the beak bombs here. The next bit where the Taz is a little bit different is just in dealing with these statues. Just due to the precision of it, the Taz can pretty quickly knock out all the rest of the three statues here. And it has an interesting effect on Grunty when the three Jinjos hit her. So it puts her so off center that she doesn't even fall onto the pillar, she just falls onto the ground. So this actually doesn't really do much in the game, but it's just sort of like a cool little effect of doing that section really, really quickly. You'll also notice the Taz sitting here like grinding out eggs on this section. That's because the Taz didn't hit the egg note door. Hyper really meticulously planned out exactly how many eggs were needed. We've got the Ginginator here, and I guess rather than the Taz need to worry about going back and forth like RTA does, it can pretty much just avoid the fireballs like this and hit all the holes all at once like that. So yeah, I'd love to see a new revision of the Taz being made. I reckon there'd be a bit of time to save with FFM and bit clips and everything like that. But this Taz is definitely still worth watching today. There's so many cool little bits and pieces in it. And it's a nice little nostalgic glimpse into what 2016 Banjo was like as well. Alright, next I want to talk about my Taz of the any percent category. Now this is technically classified as a low TAD, and the reason for that is actually Tazzing bit clips are incredibly difficult. So it would take me years to make this Taz had I done it without the bit clip position hack, but pretty much what you do is you run a Lewis script which puts Banjo in the right position. We know everything in this Taz is theoretically possible to do, but this made the Taz a several month project rather than a several year project, and that's been pretty much the norm for Banjo Tazzing. Unfortunately, it means that you won't see this Taz on Taz videos as a published run, but you can still find it on YouTube and watch through. This Taz does FFM setup, which involves dying in a minigame. We do a little tile skip there, and we get into the boombox minigame. Now, normally you would need to take a whole bunch of damage and die from Banjo, but we're going to see our very first bit clip of the run. Now, I actually managed to get this bit clip without the position hacks or anything, but it's right there, you just ground pound through the floor, and we get FFM. Now we're going to start the actual run here. I'll note that Taz's do time from power on, so it's really important that I did that section optimally, so as to not lose time there in the Taz timing. Now you might also notice that I'm in German. So Bottle's text here is 1 second faster in German, so it saves that little bit of time. And I have the ability to play in German because I'm on the PAL version. So bit clips are a lot more powerful on the PAL version just due to the lower frame rate. Essentially, on NTSC, you can only fall straight down through the floor, but on PAL, you're able to fall through the floor in a jump and then flutter past a wall, so it's much more open. If the 100% TAS was going to be redone, it would be redone on PAL for that reason. Alright, so right here we're going to see exactly how powerful bit clips are in a TAS setting. Just jump up here and into a bit clip spot, straight through there. And we reload the room. You might be wondering why did I do that, and the reason is to trigger FFM. As soon as you go through a lair loading zone, you get FFM, and it's a little bit quicker to do it like that compared to going out and in the lair. Now we're going to get a bit clip through Mumbo's Mountain to enter it without opening it, so this is going to be a 0 jiggy TAS this any percent. Alright, in Mumbo's Mountain, we're not going to need any notes. Essentially, all that I need are Mumbo tokens. So we do not have a water skip on the N64 version, so I still need 20 Mumbo tokens, and I still need to turn into the pumpkin from Mad Monster Mansion. So that's going to be what the bulk of this TAS is collecting Mumbo tokens. Now I'm going to use a very cheeky strat here to get up onto where Conga is without actually defeating, feeding Chimpy. And then I'm going to go towards Bottles and learn eggs. So I want to learn eggs here because I need many eggs for this TAS. Eggs are used for bit clips because the way that we do bit clips, you sometimes need a lag frame to do those. Very important that you have eggs to generate that lag frame. Speaking of, we're going to see our first PAL only style bit clip here coming up. So with normal bit clips, you don't need a lag frame or anything, you just ground pound through the floor. But on PAL, you're able to generate enough speed with a jump to fall through the ground. We'll see it here in a second. So poop the egg, and through the floor, flutter underneath, ground pound back up through. So really important, for those style of bit clips, you need to be on the PAL version, and you need a lag frame. The way I got the lag frame there was by pooping an egg into the beehive, and the frame that the beehive takes damage on, the game will generate a lag frame. That speeds Banjo up slightly. Bit clip through there just to get back to the top of this room a little bit faster, and then we're going to move on. So what I did there with the bit clip before was just skip the 50 note door, because I currently have 0 notes. So we're going to take a little journey into the pipe here to grab a Mumbo token. You'll notice I'm going out of my way for pretty much every Mumbo token I can get here. So we get the Mumbo token, and why not just bit clip through the pipe there to get back through rather than walking out. Bit clips break TASs. They're much more prominent than RTA. I'm luring that gruntling there. I'm going to poop an egg onto it to generate a lag frame and bit clip through the floor. You need the lag frame to get through the floor. It's really important. You might also notice that the grunty text came up there. That also sometimes helps generate lag, but you can't always rely on it because it depends on the cycle that you're at. This gruntling here is about to get hit with an egg, so egg, bit clip through the floor and go up through. And then we're going to make our way up towards the lair. So next one we need to go to is Mad Monster Mansion. I try to get up to Mad Monster Mansion with a bit clip, but I actually have to go up to Grunty's Eye to get through there first, so this room is a little bit slow. I believe after this TAS is made, somebody found a faster bit clip to get up through this section, so this room could potentially be improved. But basically what I'm going to do is get up into the Eye, which is above the loading zone to Mad Monster Mansion. A little TAS jump to get through there. And with this Eye, you can pretty much just bit clip through it there and get into this note door that we need to be in. Now, Mad Monster Mansion early might look familiar from RTA. You basically just bit clip into that spot there, rather than doing the whole hectic setup that RTA does. But I'll stress, everything here is still theoretically possible to do. One of my favorite bit clips here goes into the cellar. Pretty fun. And in Mad Monster Mansion, again, I'm just zooming around getting as many Mumbo tokens as I possibly can. Once we got 20 Mumbo tokens, we're going to turn into the pumpkin. And you can just see how much time water level skip would save, because it means we wouldn't need any of those 20 Mumbo tokens. And with the pumpkin, why not just do a bit clip through the floor there? It's quicker than dying. So we go through and raise the water level pretty much like normal. There's a little skip you can do. If you high jump on that, if you got precise enough height spacing, you can actually hit the roof of the coffin and the switch at the same time. So that's what I do there. Now, for runners who are familiar with doing FP early, this movement here will probably feel a little bit jarring in a second. We're about to get FP early, or that same clip. But why actually go down there? Why not just bead bomb through it from a distance? And then up through the 450 door. Since making this TAS, somebody has found a bit clip to get through that 450 door. So again, that's a room that could definitely be improved if we made a version 2 of this any % TAS. Next is just raising the water level to get up towards that Click Clock Wood area. Now, next thing here, we got to do 640 note door skip. It would be fast to do this with a bit clip if the shrapnel was in this room, because we could use that to generate a lag frame. But realistically, you have to go into Treasure Trove Cove to get the shrapnel, and that's just going to be slower. So I did normal 640 skip, as you'd see in RTA. Up here, we're going to have to do a bit clip to get past the 765 note door, and it is very difficult to generate a lag frame in this room, except if you have a timer on screen and you pause, it always generates a lag frame when you like pause and unpause. I don't know why having a timer does that, but it certainly does. So it's really cool that that works. So we're into Furnace Fun here. And this TAS did include the new Furnace Fun skip that we saw before. So the way that basically works is you can get hooked on the corner of a tile. It's some weird wall collision thing, and Banjo can essentially jump up it. So if you watch Banjo's shadow underneath, you'll see that he keeps jumping onto the corner of any of these white tiles and getting hooked on there. And it's only the corner of the white tiles that can get you hooked, really, or like the corner of a board altogether. So yeah, with all that in play, Furnace Fun skip is a lot faster than it was in RTA or the previous TAS there. And then the rest of the TAS looks pretty similar, except we've got a bit clip to get through the 810 note door. So we trigger the egg text, and then when the egg text clears off, we're going to get the cauldron text. Now, having the cauldron text start causes the lag frame, so we really needed to make sure we hadn't collected eggs at all before in the run, which is why we need to get them from bottles, because we needed the egg text to sort of buffer the cauldron text there. So that was 810 skip, then it was dog skip, and then we got the grunty 5. So the fact that we got 810 skip in the TAS there did save quite a lot of time, and that's why the TAS is 16 minutes versus RTA, which is 59 minutes. Now, with 810 skip, we can get it pretty easily these days with bit clips. Although, I did find another method before bit clips were ever found to get 810 skip. So, bit clips weren't the thing that completely broke this game. Kind of works like this: you get a lag frame, you flutter through. The lag frame there came from the grunty text generating, but in theory we could do it with like an egg text or an extra life text or something like that. But this took me like days and days and days to TAS without even knowing it was possible, and bit clips are definitely a lot more realistic to do this in a TAS setting. But it's still cool that you can do a non-bit clip 810 skip. And again, this one here was PAL only as well. So that's going to be all for the TAS section and all for the video. Banjo is a brilliant, brilliant game. If you haven't played it, I'd definitely try it. If you haven't speedrun it, I'd definitely try it. The community is really great, really helpful. There's a whole bunch of tutorials everywhere to help you out, and they're always really happy to see new runners join the game. That's going to be it, and thanks so much for watching.